and welcome to Valoranting. I do want to cuss. I personally think that is fucking bullshit. What can I do for you? What can I do for you, dudes? This is the best produced podcast I've ever been in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Valoranting. I'm WTFmoses, joined by Angry Lauren and Velly. We this week have an absolutely packed show. Lauren's internet is not working correctly, so this is what we're going to be looking at.
You're welcome. You are very welcome,
like
Moses.
we should give some context about this picture, though.
No context. No context.
She's actually screaming at 12-year-olds.
Okay, wow.
Kill you.
Sorry, I've been ratted out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
I don't know how old. They might not have been 12-year-olds, maybe 14, 15. Valley, how you doing?
It was at a show match.
I'm doing all right,
man.
I want to hear the full story. Like, I want to know exactly what Lauren was saying at this moment. In a show match against just random casuals, she was ripping their heads to shred. But, I'm doing good, Moses, man. It's good to be on the show. By the way, I just want to say, outright, fantastic hosting by you. What we saw of Valorant, the last series, is possibly the best Valorant I've ever seen in my life.
I think everyone agrees with that.
This game is going on to the top, man. I was wondering when it was going to reach that point. So damn close now.
Well, I mean, it's definitely got momentum. I mean, it was very exciting to see so many people get excited. So I suppose almost as excited as Lauren is in that photo when she's screaming obscenities at children who just came out for a casual day of gaming at a booth somewhere, just trying to, I just want to try out some of what the pro gamers do. Fuck you, little kids. Tell me, Lauren. Tell me the story. Tell us the story.
It's vague. I remember playing the show match at, I think it was like IEM Sydney or something. It was one of those, kind of sponsor obligation moments. And sometimes you get a little pumped up. I think it was me and Giuliano playing, and I think I played versus her, and then I had to play versus some viewers and people. And I'm not very good at the casual side. I'm not very good at just have fun.
Right.
It's like, no, these kids want to sit there and beat me and take a screenshot and be like, haha, she's garbage. So no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
What if they looked up to her too and she's fucking raging at them?
Idiots.
Yeah, is this something that actually happened where they were trash talking you, or did you put this in your mind and that's why you were channeling this destructive energy towards them?
It's all in my head. What do you think?
Okay.
It's always just me making narratives, all right?
Well, listen, that's what we're all about here. And by the way, everybody, we do have Sideshow, Mr. Josh Wilkinson joining us in a little bit to talk about the Faze tournament, so you have that to look forward to as well. And we actually have a lot to talk about. So aside from whatever Lauren's story is regarding yelling at small children, let's jump into the stories of the week. And the first one is going to be more dev communications, this time specifically about hit registration, which has been a hot topic across Reddit the last couple of days. There's been some recoil pattern questions about server performance, but realistically, Variety always has their eyes on these types of topics. So they did bring out this very long and complicated diagram / scientific journal about how hit registration works, and lets everybody know what's going on. So I mean, I love to see this stuff. I mean, PUBG did experiment with this stuff a little bit early on, but the way they illustrate how everything works and really breaks it down for you with a bunch of different examples, just gives you a better fundamental understanding, and in my opinion, builds trust with the developer in a way that you're not going to see in a ton of other games. I mean, Velly, I'll lean on you for this one. What kind of communications you guys getting from the Siege devs?
Okay, so Siege, I love you, Ubisoft. Okay, I love you a lot. Okay, so
to be clear,
let's continue working together.
I'm putting him in a hard spot.
But I will say though, I mean, there were times where the community, we had questions, man, and we're like, yo, like we want answers. And so on my podcast, I'm not saying this is the reason why, but like I had a segment, I clipped it, I put it on Twitter, and I said, yo, we need some type of like real personable communication, whether it's a representative that's getting on camera like Gandhi from Road Company, shout out to him, he's doing it right, or just something. you need to be just openly transparent with us with so much more detail to make us feel comfortable about the scene in the future. Siege now does it, and they do it well, and I love it. But yo, the level of detail they have in that Valorant article is god damn, it is great, man. You gotta love what they're doing. I mean, yeah, you need some more maps in your game, but whoever wrote that, they did a great job.
So I am weapons free on my critiques when it comes to this stuff. We didn't like, again, I'm wearing the shirt today just so every time I see myself on camera, I'm reminded of all the times we asked for information, and Lauren can attest to this a little as well. She does still work for PUBG now and again, so I won't make her say the things I'm going to. But we didn't know shit about shit for so long when it came to PUBG, how it worked, what they were working on, what the plan was for long term. You know, there would be like little snippets, like little bits here and there. But nothing. We heard nothing. So to see this is like, it's sucks. Like I came out of a cave. It's like, what? We can still talk to each other. You know, it's
I could say this, Moses, because I come from multiple esports. I came from Gears of War, and we personally had the director of multiplayer, you know, the lead guy, their Jesus for multiplayer. He would get on camera and say, you missed your shots. That's not a damn good answer, man. Like, come on, be honest. Yes, so we need more of this. Keep it up. I want some more.
Well, on the and Lauren, I guess I don't want to put you in a position here, but I mean, Valve is historically quiet as well when it comes to some of this stuff. So, I mean, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the dev communication in general right now? We have some more stuff talking about Killjoy here to kind of jump onto that topic as well. But what are your thoughts?
Oh yeah.
There's a fine line, right? And I'm good friends with a lot of developers from different companies making plenty of different titles, and there is the fine line of sometimes people have no idea what they're talking about, and sometimes they are right. And the problem is defining the two. It's like caster feedback, right? Sometimes they're right, but then you also have to kind of go through a load of horseshit to find the right stuff. So it's like I feel a little for the developers, because sometimes people are just dumb and they get angry because they're bad, right? Like, that's just how it is. But there is also some truth to some of these segments. So it's like, for me, I think there has to be a fine balance. I don't think they're being too pandery, which is good, because you really don't want to just bend over backwards to the community all the time, but you really do have to keep it on board.
Well, the nice thing is that they're not, I wouldn't call it pandering either, because they're basically saying, like, listen, the number one thing that you're going to hear for feedback from a community of people, especially in an online environment, is like, this should have been a headshot, hit reg is broken, all this other stuff. And then they come out and trot this peer-reviewed journal out and be like, actually, it's fine. And then here's a enormous list of reasons why it's fine. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but the way they explain how it works, everything's great. But, you know, you got to take the good with the bad. So, unfortunately, there was a bit of bad this week as well. Killjoy did get deployed. She was released. And unfortunately, due to a myriad of different bugs with this last patch that had Killjoy as a part of it, she was not allowed to be used. She was banned from the tournament for Faze, which is really unfortunate, because if I'm a PR person at Valorant, I want to make sure that our new agent is in the spotlight. So you, in a free to play environment such as this one, you want to have that stuff available. It's a giant ad for it. So to have it not be in a state to be ready for a tournament like that, I mean, from a competitive integrity standpoint, kind of good, but from a advertising riot perspective, not very good. Lauren, we'll get your thoughts first.
I think this is just going to become a point where we have to have a player test realm. For me, I think it has to be the case, and I don't want it to be what PUBG did, because it just doesn't work. But let's say for, I don't know, 5 hours in a Prime North American slot and then 5 hours in a Prime EU slot, you say, hey, if you download this additional client, or, you know, this extra client, you patch up to the version, you do some beta testing, you submit feedback, we'll give you a skin for it. Player test developed only skin, just a little reward.
Points,
exactly. Something to reward players wanting to do it and actually giving feedback. Not just playing going, oh, this is garbage, fuck this game. No. Sitting there giving good feedback, saying, hey, actually I found this bug, shot through the wall, the surfaces don't work, right? So it's like that sort of stuff to encourage players to do it would be awesome. And obviously, like, as soon as you deploy an agent or any element to a game that's brand new, so the turret form, we haven't seen anything like that in the game yet. Anything quite as similar to a degree. I guess you could say maybe a weird element. The cameras are a little bit of a unique aspect that you get with Cypher, but there's nothing like the turret. No quote-unquote automatic item like that. So it's like, I think for me,
Right.
I'm not surprised it didn't work. I honestly thought the turrets would have bugged out and been able to be stuck to a load of things, but actually it was the surfaces that caused a lot of problems. So it's like, for me, I
Right.
think that put a player test realm out there, do it in short bursts, get some big feedback from it, and then roll it out when it's ready. I know they want to push these, out there, and I guess the best testing is on live, but it does come at the price of having to shut it out on tournaments. Again, it kind of sucks. It's that double-edged sword, right?
Right. And Velly, it's a matter of I think with the Cypher cameras that Lauren brought up, that they were hot fixing that kind of stuff. And with Cypher cam locations being kind of buggy, you can definitely fix that stuff on the fly. But to have an agent that has so many like realistically complex skills, like the ability to put the nano swarm inside the spike, it's just one of those things that a QA team, even if they have a lot of time, like let's say weeks or however long they had a chance to mess around with it, you need to have brute force, and that's like handing it over to a bunch of nerds who are like, I'm going to see how many different ways I can break this.
So one thing that Siege does well, and I'm not saying every game needs to have it. We have a test server. Whenever there's a new character, they put that new character on that test server for what? I think a month, 3 weeks. Right. To where everybody in the world gets to test it out, because I was on like my little bootleg honeymoon in the city in the condo, right? And so I looked at my phone, and that's when I saw Killjoy honeymoon. Yeah, we went to the condo because people don't like to wear masks outside, and we can celebrate the way we wanted to. But right. But the thing was, it was just like the fact that you have to bench a new character. It sucks, but rather than having a test server and to go through stuff like that, I feel like the esports side and just the game side, where they release all types of content, make sure that we coordinate things to where, server maintenance, whether it's new characters, to where they come out at the beginning of the week. So by the time the tournament hits, on the Thursday, maybe Wednesday, Friday, whatever, there's enough time to see, okay, this is going to be game breaking. But you know what? Good for them. They took Killjoy out the game. This isn't Fortnite 2.0. We're not going to have an update right before the tournament where something broken is announced. I feel like they did the right thing. And you know what? Tough shit. You weren't able to showcase your new agent, but she's still going to be there in the future. And you didn't have a scuff tournament because of a broken character. So I don't have any problem with what happened, and I'm happy that they took that route.
And actually on that note, I want to just jump in, Moses. Just real quick.
Go ahead.
Because it's something that kind of jumped to mind when you said that. We've had, speaking of Valve, I mean, this is the disconnect that we've had before. We've had patches on tournament days. And that fucks everything up. Hello, me. Wow, that's a damn close zoom.
That's great.
God, I'm not gonna make any more individual points, but no. Yeah, real quickly, they've pushed. Please don't. My dead ends are really screaming at me. God, get some conditioner. No, but they've patched live on tournament days, which is absolutely fucking sucked, because everything can get thrown out, everything can be broken. I mean, we're sat at events going, well, I guess we're going to sit here for 3 more hours until everything's good to go and we've tested everything we could. And when you push these updates, you have to push it on every machine. And all of those machines are offline because we're at LAN, and, part of the cheating protocols is it ain't online. So now suddenly you've got to patch over 100 PCs. So all this shit happens. And I mean, and I pick CSGO as an easy example. I could pick every other game too. So I hope that they keep that in mind, that, when they push these patches, at least they seem to not force it on the competitive side just yet. They seem to keep it in mind a little bit. Like, I haven't had a tournament be completely screwed over. They've pulled out, Killjoy. So, I mean, as said, the amount of times we've seen broken things being thrown in last minute and people going, well, I guess that's fucked me over. So, yeah, I mean, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach these things, and I hope that Riot, as they continue to learn these lessons, because it is a new game, right? And how things break and when they break, and they're going to learn lessons. They're very data driven, this company, obviously. So it's new territory for them as well. So I imagine that as time goes on, they're going to continue to incorporate this level of feedback and probably consider things like test realm as well. No,
well, not Twitch. Sorry,
I was waiting.
Shroud.
I was
Shroud.
waiting.
It's happened.
Lauren, I was gonna say.
It's
I told
happened.
you we were talking about the break.
I wanted to say it.
And that's what I was gonna say as well. So congratulations to Shroud, of course. Just breaking news there on Twitter that he's returning to Twitch, to the shock of literally no one. So I mean, that's big congrats to him. May the money waterfall continue to flow, my friend. So let's it's also great to have Shroud back on Twitch, like, of course, right? So let's talk about upcoming tournaments as well. The Korean scene is starting to kick off a little bit. They've been having regular tournaments called Clan Masters, and that is the kind of the ignition series of the Korean region. Korea and obviously Asia in general, a huge market for Riot, and especially they want to make an impact in Korea. So to have these regular tournaments, they also have some upcoming teams. There's some interesting stuff happening as well. So Vision Strikers, a team that we talked about many weeks ago, has kind of drawn eyeballs as one of the best teams. But something that was just revealed recently, if you direct your eyes down to Vac Kimchi, this has a very special player on there, and we can talk to Sideshow about this later. But ex New York XL Overwatch League player Flower is also playing on that team. Very popular player. And it kind of shows that the migration from Overwatch to Valorant is not just necessarily in the North American scene, but this is happening in other regions as well. So to have that happen, we also have T1 announcing yet another Valorant roster. This time they have a Korean one as well. Obviously, T1, a huge organization in Korea on the back of Faker and their League of Legends team. So that would be now 3 total rosters that T1 is fielding. They've got a North American team, they've got a Korean team, and they've got a North American Academy team as well. So I guess I'll get your thoughts on this first, Velly. Riot's moves in Korea got to be pretty impactful, right?
Yo, it's coming at the best time ever, right? So one of the major discussions that we've been having on this show is if this can be the FPS that really captures that Asian market. You're talking about Korea, we're talking about Japan, everywhere else out there, right? This is the right step at the best time possible. We just had some crazy viewership for Valorant, and the rivalry between the top 2 teams right now, our version of Optic and Envy, Final Boss and Carbon, that has exploded and helped out Valorant in the biggest way possible. So to ride that wave and to bring that type of competition over to Korea is so smart. And now you have T1 investing in a team out there. It shows that this scene is not only worth investing in, but Riot, they have big plans to really grow this. And I really feel like, especially this is what I'm really hoping for. I hope we get a super competitive team out there, a team that can compete with NA, EU, Latin America. If that happens, I think Valorant is just going to kill it internationally.
Lauren?
Honestly, I'd like to see the stats though. As much as towards the top, we're seeing big moves. Too. I don't think we're seeing a large pickup in player base out there yet, especially in like South Korea, if I'm honest. I think Monty and a couple of others were discussing the PC Bang scene out there and how many issues there were. I don't think that's been resolved yet, so I'd love to see the stats as to where it is, because obviously, like right now, I think it's League of Legends, probably PUBG, around that mark is way towards the top. I don't think Valorant's anywhere near there, so I'd really like to see where it's currently placing. So I can't get those stats to today's market. So I think it's really good towards the top to see some good things. It's great to see some teams making moves, but it becomes lopsided if you don't have the players to watch and care about and foster the scene out there. You'll just get that recycled, like, here's your another XDS player, here's your Overwatch player. You need that grassroots base. So I'm hoping that, yes, we see moves towards the top, which is excellent. It's super exciting, but that needs to then echo into also picking up general players, right?
I wonder if
go ahead, Velly. Yeah,
I'm sorry. Because I know in Siege, a lot of orgs go towards the APAC region because of the fact that salaries are relatively low compared to their NA and EU counterparts, right? I'm wondering if that step is also going to play a role here in Korea and other Asian places out there, Asian communities, and if they're able to do that and capitalize off of skins and everything else. I wonder which route is going to be taken. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that I think that right now in Korea, and obviously I'm not an expert on the region or anything like that, but it kind of feels like obviously there's a lot of extraneous factors that are kind of impacting Valorant as a game. Obviously, we're living in a global pandemic right now, which is always on the back.
I wouldn't know too much about that too.
Yeah, right. And then you have the PC Bang issue with the way Vanguard works with PC Bangs is kind of impeding that, and that's a huge deal as well. Which is what Lauren was just mentioning. We talked about this several weeks ago, but also just the amount of draw that you would get away from a game like Overwatch or a game like PUBG in a place like Korea. that they kind of have their niche games and they kind of gravitate around that. Not to mention the Korean market is very MMO heavy as well. So a game like Valorant definitely needs to grow its audience, probably in a lot more of an aggressive market than you would have in a more advertising heavy market like Europe and North America, where Counter-Strike is so huge. So moving past the Korea discussion, we also have some tournaments happening in Japan, and this will sound familiar. Ashwinder and Banana Culture, old friends at Banana Culture, are putting together a $50,000 tournament or $50,000 all Asian tournament. Yeah.
What?
I'm not surprised
That's
though.
amazing.
Like Banana Culture puts on a great deal of Riot's events too. I knew of Banana Culture before PUBG, for example. PUBG tends to use them to implement a lot of their events, especially in the Asian region. But I know League of Legends have been used, or Riot, should I say, used them for a lot of Worlds, for example. So it's not surprising to see them out there, and clearly they know the audience incredibly well. So I can only imagine that's gonna be pretty successful.
And they're a huge company. They do music, they do so many different things, and that is kind of the culture of Banana Culture, which is a weird anyway. They kind of go more towards the showmanship and they and Lauren said it, they know their audience, and obviously the any tournaments in that region, you want to have a big draw. But that kind of Velly, any thoughts on the
50K? No, I mean just 50K. That's ridiculous.
For that region, that's big.
But you know what though? You said something about grassroots we don't know yet. Like, I'm an optimist. Like, you can tell from everything I say for every segment. Like, I'm such an optimist. But the thing is, like, 50K to start off a tournament with those regions, holy shit. Like, that's big. And you know what? Valorant wasn't big on the first day here in NA. Like, I remember tuning into tournaments and seeing like 5 to 10K at a time. Now it's over 100,000 viewers. So eventually it's going to grow. And what's the best way to bring people along? Yeah, they have their games like Overwatch and whatnot, whatever it might be. But, you know, the players that aren't at the top in those games, they're going to venture out to see if they're going to be at the top in this game. And with $50,000 on the line, you're going to have to be stupid to not even try it. So I feel good about it, man.
Yeah, it's a big prize pool. I mean, we had this discussion a few weeks ago when it comes to like the tournament structure in Japan, how you need like special licenses to both put on the events as well as compete in the events. There's a lot of barriers to entry though. So to have a big prize pool like that in a place like Japan is not, I'm not going to say the word strange, but it is definitely a good positive sign to draw people in. And I would love to see how that develops. Any thoughts on that, Lauren?
I mean, Riot has always gone for global presence. I think that was one of the main things we got out of the interview with the main man. That they want global presence, and the Japanese market really hasn't been enamored with PC gaming. Obviously, culturally, it was never a huge factor. You know, a while back, we saw a bit of a surge coming through for a couple of players here and there. We've had, you know, PUBG certainly having a couple of names to be thrown into the hat. Counter-Strike had a couple. And if this is the game to capture the region, this is the perfect way to do it. So if they're seeing the potential, because again, I don't think Valorant really shows its player base numbers anywhere, because it's not on Steam, it's not easily accessible. But if Riot is pushing towards it too, if they're, you know, investing themselves into it, if, you know, I don't know how much of the money is, you know, through them, but that aside, if they're putting a lot of time and effort into this region, they clearly see that there's a market to be had, and they're not going to do it for the sake of doing it. Like, why would you? They're a business. You make money, right? You're there to tap into a core audience. So I think it's going to be excellent to see if they found a niche there and they can really work on it. If they can build that to be a real, like, bastion again, that'd be fantastic.
They also have I think the fan presence in a place like Japan and the ability to kind of coalesce people around teams is going to be the same strategy that you want to have. You want to have rivalries and everything like that. We'll talk about it, and obviously it's the element in the room right now. But the Sentinels and TSM rivalry is going to single-handedly put North American Valorant on the rocket ship, and we already saw what that could potentially look like this last weekend. But before we get to that, we have also the Allied Esports Odyssey tournament, which I believe has already started or is going to be starting very shortly. This is the next big Ignition Series event. Well, I wouldn't say, I guess you could call it big. It's a 15,000 euro prize pool, but really it's about the teams participating. We have Liquid, the brand new signed Liquid team. Zip Out and Go Kill, which is now Fun Plus Phoenix. They were just signed for this tournament as well. Obviously, have G2 and IP is in there. So even though it might not have the same Yeah, and the Giant. I don't. Who is that? Who are they? I don't know the Giants.
They
get picked up from someone.
They're a pocket team. They're a real pocket team. They're kind of ex CS:GO players, a little bit quiet, but from Spain, and they are really good. I'm pretty sure they just went 1-1 with NIP right now as well. So they are a team to watch. They're definitely one of those like quiet names that you're not going to instantly look at. They're not your liquid NIP, you know what I mean? But they are definitely a little dangerous. So see if they can maybe rustle up a couple of teams out there. It's actually a really good tournament. Really, really good.
That's great. Yeah, well, it might not be the heavyweight tournament, but it's definitely lean and mean. I like the teams. I like the matchups. Schedule doesn't seem too oppressive, which is a nice change for European Valorant. Yeah, I mean, I obviously most eyes are going to be on G2 as I think now the last.
No, Moses. No, the most eyes will not be on G2. It'll be on fucking CNED. Have you seen Turkish fans in Europe? I bet you he has more viewers than the entire stream. I bet
She's right.
His stream will, or like WTCN or Mythrain, whoever's covering it, he will have more viewers than the mainstream.
40K right now.
If they get to the finals,
what I was gonna say is that they're the last team that has a 10+ game winning streak, according to VLR.gg. They're on an 18-game winning streak. They have not lost in a long ass time. So G2 is on a pretty hot streak. They're currently sitting atop the ratings on VLR.gg. So my eyes are on G2 to see if they can navigate the treacherous waters of the tournament they're playing in Pansy. But yes, the Turkish fans are I like
wild out there.
Look at her. I go immediately hostile with Pansy because look how she's looking at me. Like, how would you not be hostile? What I was gonna say is like, yeah, it's a massive Turkish fan base out there. They're rabid for everything, and they definitely get behind their favorite players in a big way, and probably in both a critical as well as supportive way. So Velly, I imagine this tournament's just kicking off, so we can't really talk about it too much, but it's a nice lean tournament. I like the way it looks.
Oh yeah. And you were wondering, is G2 going to have competition and whatnot in this tournament? We're looking at other teams. We're looking at Team Liquid and other teams. I mean, the way this tournament is going to end, I feel like G2 should take it, and I don't know if you want to dive into like the team that can challenge them. I feel like Team Liquid can be that team, but we've seen them struggle already against G2. They also lost again in the last tournament they had in the finals, which was really bad. And G2 is just going to take it all. They have no competition, in my opinion.
I think that G2 is definitely the team to beat. Liquid. My biggest thing with that squad was that they needed the resources and the time and all the things that Liquid can provide. That big, deep bank account that Liquid opened up and just showered them with all the things they need. They'll have the Alienware training facility. They're going to have all this gear. They're going to have their Marvel jerseys. Not to mention all the boost you get from streaming and all the things that you're going to get from
Liquid is spending out right now.
Yeah, like, well, we'll talk to that. We'll talk about Liquid in a minute here too.
They made a lot of money last year, though.
Even with Moses joining the CS:GO
Liquid has
team,
like the VC money out the
everything.
ass.
Yeah,
they're getting it.
Like there's just like they're in the portfolio of some mega corporation billionaire dudes who are just like, oh yeah, what's their budget? 500 million? Yeah, whatever, not a big deal. It's like, the amount of money for that investment is just like a drop in the enormous like Illuminati bucket for these guys. So. But we do have to move on. I think we're gonna spend a ton of time on the Ignition series, so I'm kind of pushing us through this stuff here. But let's talk about roster moves. This is now there's a couple of these are not really roster moves, but kind of explanations as to why we haven't seen certain rosters. And the first one is Fnatic, who basically indicated that they were likely not going to see a team until 2021. In the beginning, our plan was to build a top-down model and bring in some coaching staff and some analysts that we thought could help us build that together. But at the moment, we kind of pushed our entry at least another quarter. I would say I think Q4 is probably the earliest you would expect Fnatic to be seen with a Valorant team or with a team in Valorant. So a couple of things there to unpack. The first of which is, and when we talk about NRG, you'll kind of see a pattern start to emerge that certain teams that have other like numerous squads and other titles are kind of hesitant on Valorant, and I think has a lot to do with the amount of money that's got tossed around at the very beginning, specifically around like your teams like T1, Sentinels, who really opened up the wallets and set a market price, which we'll hear the NRG CEOs talk about here in a second. They set the market price quite high, and a team like Fnatic does not want to be jumping in at the $20,000 a player price that has been set in some cases in North America. So we'll start with Pansy. What do you think about Fnatic's strategy here?
Pussies. I mean, I get it. Like, I don't think we've seen everything out of Europe yet. I think North America was an easier investment. You had a lot more tier 1 players, a lot more eyes on players coming across, a lot more headlines. The kind of 3 core lineups that were the easy ones to look at have pretty much been locked in now, with Liquid and G2 being where they're at. It comes then down to Fnatic of, okay, well, you could have taken the risk on someone like the Fun Plus Phoenix roster, or they could have taken the risk on potentially the Turkish team, which was obviously theorized at one point that was going on. But is there an easy pickup beyond that? I'd say no. But again, like, get in on the fucking grassroots. Like, I know that I don't think there is enough value right now to be asking the salaries in Europe, if I'm honest. And that's just the state of affairs. And it's that weird like cycle of, well, if there's no teams involved, there's no investment, it makes it harder.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I
think
there needs to be another big team. Yeah, exactly. I think there needs to be another big team put together, and if that comes around, maybe. But I also think Fnatic could just miss the boat on this too.
Well, I mean,
I just think they're assed out.
Go ahead, Velly.
I just think they're assed out. I'm so sorry, kind of you all.
Oh, it's all good.
I think that everyone waited so long because they didn't want to spend their dollars that's in their bank accounts on signing these players and jumping in on the action, even though, it's still a big question mark to us regular people about when the esports scene is really going to take off. So what happens when you sit on your ass and you wait and you do nothing because you don't want to spend, $20K in salary a month? You look at all the top players get signed to these big orgs. And then now when all the top players get signed and they're gone, especially in NA, because NA is just stacked at the moment, you're sitting there like, all right, what the hell do we do? You look at other regions. You got to look at Europe now. Europe is so lopsided when it comes to competition. You look at APAC, it's APAC. What do? I feel like they missed their time, and now they have to sit down and they have to wait to see who the next big player is or whatever. There's rumors of players coming in like Nitro, whatnot. I don't know what team is going to sign to. I heard you scream at other teams, but other than that, yeah, I feel like they don't have a choice but to wait right now.
Right. I kind of think that that's the path. But my question is that we just had this big tournament with Faze that had broke all sorts of crazy viewership numbers, 160,000 people watching on a bunch of different channels, all this other stuff. That is going to make it more lucrative for orgs to get involved. So it's obviously they're not getting that viewership in Europe right now. Fnatic, traditionally a European organization, they're likely going to have a European org as well, or a roster, I should say. But let's hear it from NRG. This I think is the most illuminating aspect, and this is probably what most people are thinking. So let's check in with Hex and I believe Andy Miller from NRG, who had some thoughts on this subject as well.
Okay. For me, super interested in Valorant. We've always obviously been looking around at it, trying to see how the space evolves. Didn't want to get in early. This is a lot of hype. Again, this is another trough of despair. Like you see teams like the Sentinels, for example, who aren't in any of the other major games. They jump in and they pay exorbitant salaries for their players, which sets a market rate, which doesn't make sense, especially for a game which is just evolving. And who knows if those guys will still be here in 6 months. I'm sure they will. Sinatra and those guys are great, but you get the point. So that one's been tough. So we decided to take a step back and see how things are evolving. Every day we have a new opportunity and there's interest, but it's something we're checking out. And then League would be wonderful someday, somewhere.
So yeah. I honestly, I think that's the most honest answer you're really going to get, is that it's too expensive. We don't want to pay that for a unverified product. And
how much are they getting paid?
The rumor is that like Sinatra was like a $20,000 a month player. I imagine if he's at the top end, I would imagine like the Shazams and Zoms and those guys are probably making let's say 10, median 15, I don't know, but a lot, like a lot for esports. I mean, not compared to League and not compared to CS where those guys are making shitloads of money, but those are two of the biggest esports in the world, and that's kind of the price you have to pay to get the best in those environments. So my opinion is that from a business standpoint, these are the business guys. They're looking at the dollars, they're looking at the cents, and they're saying, nope, we're not going to do this right now. And at least that's fine. But there is going to be a point where this thing might explode in their pockets while they're sitting on their asses, and then next thing you know, they're going to be paying it anyway, and they're not going to have the pick of the litter as some of the other teams have. But as Lauren has stated already, Velly, there's not a lot of grassroots talent growth right now, which I think is why we're going to hit this level eventually where there's just no one to pick up, which is what you said. So we'll start with Lauren. What are your thoughts on the approach of these two organizations?
I don't blame them for doing it. Like, if it was my money, if I was in their position, I wouldn't do it yet either. I want to see at least one pro league. I want to see one bit of structure, because right now, let's look at the market of esports. It's super volatile in the fact that it's just, I don't know, it's just all over the place, right? You've got this kind of like COVID-style tournament setup. Who knows what it's going to look like when we can open up to events, and if that becomes a possibility. If it does stay online, what's it going to look like 6 months to 12 months down the line? Who knows? As I said, if it was my money, I wouldn't have jumped on the NA train yet either. I think it's a little bit more of an easier market to look at because they're a little bit more marketable. They have their own streams. They come with an audience. Some of them already have a great deal of pedigree to pick up on. And there was a lot of tournaments initially announced. But would I have paid that money? Absolutely not. And Europe has even less of that. Like, yes, you could look at Mixwell and Scream as your big household names, right? They're the big streamers, the ones who've got the bigger following. Right. And then you can kind of complement that with other players. But outside of that, apart from someone like, a specific regional player, like, your WTCN, your Mythrain, your CNED, your Turkish fan base. But are BBL esports actually going to be that good in 3 or 4 months' time? Who knows? So is it even worth that? So again, for me, I wish there would be a middle ground where you can pick up a team for a competitive amount of money, but the teams are also reasonable. But again, if you're a player, you want the most you can get. You don't want to sell yourself short when other people are getting bought out for huge chunks of money. So again, I understand it, but for me, I just feel like I would wait longer. I wish that we had some bigger names coming in. I really do, but I think it's going to be a wait and see from most of these orgs.
Velly?
So when I was 18, I started dating heavily when I got into college, right? And I found this one
dating
girl beautiful.
Heavily.
She was
hold on, pause. Can we unpack that term? What does dating heavily mean?
I was in the game, man. I was in the game hard and strong, Yeah.
Okay,
man.
got it.
And so, I ran into this beautiful girl. She was Dominican and black, a little exotic joint. So I started taking her out to all these expensive dinners. We started grabbing expensive, nice breakfast. I was spending some good money, It didn't turn out the way I thought it would. At the end of the day, it was wasted money. She didn't compete with the rest of the competition. And so I started going the cheaper route, and I waited till I got the right one. That's why I'm merged, right? I felt like these orgs are taking. I feel like they're taking the right step rather than jumping in and spending all your money. You know what? Like Lauren said, I get that. I understand that. You don't want to jump in like an idiot, sign the wrong team, and then you guys are getting 13th and 16th place. Hello. And so what I'm trying to say is, until we start getting open tournaments, something I've been saying every week since we've been here, it's going to be looking slow for a lot of orgs, a lot of good players, and a lot of teams in general. And you know what? NA is going to be hard as hell to get into. Take a look at all the tier 1 orgs that are in that last tournament that you hosted. It was beautiful. You look at Europe, you got 4 really high-end orgs, and the rest, not really. Yeah, everybody's invited. You don't have new talent.
Right.
I think they're doing the right thing. Wait. The talent's going to come. Just wait. Like, that pick a litter stuff, that's fine. At this point, it's not, because now you're just picking up people that no one else wanted. Wait till the new talent comes up. Save your money. And then, you know what? It might work off in the future because natural pros are coming. That was a topic we had before. And I think that, we're going to have the Fnatics. We're going to have the NRGs. It's going to be funny to see NRG sign probably a European team. But I think that's the route that they should go. And you know what? We might see some NA talent in Europe as well. I think that's going to be a route that's going to be there because this isn't some tier 5 esport. Has that happened yet?
No, COVID.
Yeah, you can't import anything
because
right now.
The visas. Yeah.
I think hold on a second. I want to rewind a little bit here because there's a lot to unpack in your statement there, Velly. So I want to know, did you start at like Brazilian barbecue and wind up at White Castle? Like, is that what happened? Like, you're like, all right, my Dominican black princess, but I'm gonna take you to this Brazilian barbecue joint I'm gonna buy you some nice. I'm gonna buy you a bottle of wine. I'm gonna rent a Chevy Malibu so you don't see my Toyota Tercel. I'm gonna take you down. I'm gonna get you some food. I'm gonna wine you and dine you. And then she's like, okay, I'll see you later. And then it's like leaves you, and you're like, all right, I guess I gotta go to the. I guess the next one we're gonna go to like East Side Mario's or maybe some like Chick-fil-A or something like that. You know, you gotta click down the ladder. So where was the apex of like value of date versus hotness of lady? Like, where did you land at?
Man, she was hot, so the dates were definitely up there. And the thing was, I worked at Game Crazy, so I'm making minimum wage. So your boy was cashing out. I was simping hard back then, and I learned my lesson. Not to simp too hard in the beginning.
Going on $200 dates.
Right, I'm spending $390 the first week. It's ridiculous. So I learned to take my time and look for talent that's out there rather than being desperate just to have something to have it. That's ultimately what I was trying to say. So
you didn't sign Sinatra. You got who did you get? You got hazed.
I got 100. I was dating 100 thieves, man. It was bad.
Oh, yeah. I was trying to keep it in the level of higher competition. If I'm the one dating 100 thieves, okay, Velly, you got to stay up there with Sentinels and TSM, all right?
But also, just on that note, like away from the dating pool, back to the players. I want the players to start building brands for themselves. I know, God no. No, I think the players in Europe also need to build their own brands a little bit better as well. I think North America is a little bit better at it. A lot of these players already had these streams. They already had, their YouTube content. They already had all this. They had, a big social following. Europe needs a bit of that. They need to lean into it a bit more, build up a presence. Yeah, you may not be in the big teams yet, but let's make some personalities out there. Let's get some of that, presence known. Like when Artist first burst on the scene, no one knew who he was, and the guy made a name for himself instantly.
So, down the line, let's talk about 5 months from now, and the big grand finale esports scene isn't here yet. Is building a brand really that important compared to orgs looking for skilled players? Like, do they look for brands that much over pure skill?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yes.
If you so think of it this way. Think of it this way: is like basically if you're gonna pay all this money for a person, you want to get as much value out of that person as you can. So I look at 100 Thieves honestly as well as a team like TSM and Sentinels. Where 100 Thieves, most of those guys weren't streaming before, even when they were playing PUBG, they were not streaming at all. 100 Thieves came out and said, you have to stream. You have to be out there building your brand, because the more fans that you have, the more fans that we have, the more fans that come out and buy our merch, watch the games, support the scene, buy the skins, all that stuff. So if you're looking at a player, and that's why so many teams in Europe we're looking for these cornerstone CS talents like Scream. Like the guy's got 500,000 followers on Twitter alone, not to mention his streams and everything else like that. That is a value buy. You're not only are you buying the player for his skill and his output, but you're also buying the eyeballs that come along with him, which in this business, eyeballs are king. You have to have as many of them. They generate money. They're good for advertisements. You get sponsors, all these different things. So you absolutely must. And if you're an esports player out there, building your brand is something that comes with you. Look at Hiko. He built his personal brand. He brought it along with him. It's exploded because of Valorant. And if he didn't have that, his value to 100 Thieves is not nearly as high. And that also gives you a security blanket. Whereas if, let's say, your competition doesn't work out and you're not the king of the hill and you have to go back to doing something else that isn't making your cash from an organization, your stream and your Twitter following, that stuff stays with you forever. Well, hopefully forever. But that is anything you have to do. And I mean, everyone should be looking at building their personal stuff.
Bear in mind, there is exception to that rule in my mind, where you have to be and it's the same in every example with esports, in my opinion, that you have to be so shit hot that you supersede it. And that, I mean, you are the 1 out of the 100 of the currently very good players. So you imagine that percentage of who you are, right? It's very few and far between. So I said, yes, you could be incredibly shit hot at the game, like so far beyond everywhere else, and you're still valuable. But I bet you the second you're with an org, they will make you stream. They will make you get the Twitter. You'll be on Facebook. You'll be doing videos. You got to do it all. You can't just be one-dimensional anymore.
But that's what I'm saying, though. Like they can. I'm not gonna be on this topic forever, but can't the org just sound like a god with no following and just be like, stream? We'll gas you up, and then you'll build that following. I don't know. I guess getting it beforehand is easier.
Yeah.
Food and crash. Well, no, you'll have inherent value. Like if you want to have value right out of the gate, you will have to have that following out of the gate. But also these teams can build your brand. Like if you're on Faze, let's say like Baby Bay or Raucous or whoever, maybe these guys have, let's say 1,200 viewers, which is a great first stream of that size. But they're not really generating a ton of followers or whatever else like that. But if you get on the Faze stream team, imagine the auto hosts that come your way on that. So it's the juice that these orgs can provide you, especially an organization like Faze. I mean, you're getting these auto hosts from like Nick Merckx or whoever, and Faze is like, these are the guys we want to build up. We want like it's like a high water level. Like you keep bringing these new people up, so then you have like it's a machine. It's an enormous eyeball machine that just wants more eyeballs. That's just keep pouring them in there. So it's insane. And realistically, a lot of these players who maybe don't have long legs in competition need to utilize that juice as well. We had this conversation in PUBG all day long, and a lot of those guys, when their careers ended, those contracts were over.
Stupid.
Stick in your hand. You can't do anything. You're like, you have to start. You got to start with you got to start from scratch. So
too many of them.
Yeah. So I mean, and to your question, can you just sign a player that's really, really good? I think the best example of what really, really good and not a great streaming personality, we just talked to him a little while ago, Shroud. When that guy first started streaming, he wasn't looking at his camera, he wasn't talking too much, he was a little bit awkward, but he was a god, and people wanted to watch him play because he was doing these insane things. And then he started to add that personality, and afterwards, now he's the biggest streamer in the world. So it's it can definitely go both ways. So I know I'm doing a lot of talking, so let's jump into the next discussion here with Fun Plus Phoenix.
It was informative. I like it.
They just announced their roster as well. This was the Zip and Go Kill roster, and we're gonna enhance Daniel. Enhance. There he is.
Yes.
So we have Angel, Meadow, Shadow, Zippin, and Shao. Lauren, you're the EU expert. Tell us about this roster and why they're going to own so much.
Honestly, it's the best of, I guess, like a weird bunch, right? So it's two incredibly good rosters on their own. The Angel Shao combo was often talked about when it came to the Party Parrots as being the kind of pillars of that team as to talent, right? Just raw fragging power. They were the two that 100% stood out, and you had the experience coming in, especially off the back of Angel. The guy has the perfect mindset for these style games. He is the one you want to be looking at, and Shao is that kind of younger, upcoming talent. Also showed a great deal of potential, and the roster kind of fell apart. The other three were fine. They were not the standouts, though. And then you look at the other three who came in, the Swedes, and they're basically Fabricant were the roster that they were, and they were a lot of kind of like tier 2, tier 3 Counter-Strike players. They were not bad. They just never broke into the top end of the scene. But they also looked fantastic in that previous roster. So I think it's the amalgamation of two very strong rosters. And honestly, in theory, on paper, they could be the top 3 band. If everything works out for Liquid, let's put them up there. But the same can be said now for this, Fun Plus Phoenix roster. Technically, they could be great. I do worry about this whole several different countries coming together. And how will they actually mesh with communication and styles and stylistically? Because that was something that was very not done in Counter-Strike for a long time, and now has kind of come into fashion. So it's a little interesting on that regard. But otherwise, they should be a big roster.
Yeah, and I think these are my favorite types of roster moves, where you take like two halves of like two rosters and make a really good roster out of everybody. This is like the fantasy roster for unsigned EU, where you took the best parts of Party Parrots and the best parts of Fabricant, and you just mushed them together. And I hope that it works out for them, because it's got a lot of cool upside. Not to mention Fun Plus Phoenix. I'm not sure is it a Korean org, or where is this organization based?
I have no idea, dude.
No one? Okay,
like everyone
who fucking knows?
Overwatch people.
Okay, fair enough. Chinese roster. There you go. We nailed it.
The thing is, they just have no stake in the games that I've paid attention to, right? It's like, I think they were like Overwatch, League of Legends, or, I'm not sure about Overwatch, excuse me, but I know League of Legends at the very least. And they have a really great team. They've got a really big presence, but they weren't really part of the FPS market that I've known. So it's like, to me, I'm like, oh, that's a weird sounding name. Cool, I guess that could be fun to watch. But I know a lot of people were super hyped about this org coming in. Like, this is a big name apparently, but as I said, it's just not a household one from your kind of Counter-Strike or your more Western quote-unquote FPS games?
I want to see the bunker, like, you know, a little while ago when you'd see these futuristic crazy ass gaming houses in China that had like all these crazy looking aesthetics, and then someone would later post a picture of like the paint peeling off the walls because it was like they took the pictures the day it was built and then it just kind of crumbled afterwards because it was poorly built. But I want to see the Fun Plus Phoenix like compound if it exists.
Oh my god, that's beautiful! I just looked it up.
Did you really?
Yo, awesome? I never knew about this. Holy shit! Yes, this is so futuristic. It looks like something out of Alien, yo.
Daniel, if you have a second to pull, maybe Velly, you can send that to Daniel. You can pull it up while we talk about the least kept secret in all of Valorant signing history, which is Liquid finally picking up Fish 1, 2, 3, and Scream. They had easily the greatest announcement video / hype videos. It was just amazing. It was so good. Like the music. Do we have sound for this? Oh, I guess not. But I mean, do yourselves a favor, go and watch this video because I was getting chills, bro. So well done. So well done. I mean, I feel bad for all the guys out there who like got a JPEG on their team's official channel and Liquid comes out and just drops the old dad on them, you know, just here, take a look at this. You know what I mean?
Liquid's
so it's
just out here right now.
They're all Liquid. They're all wearing Liquid outfits. They're all like, it's all rendered and 3D animated. Like it's fucking crazy. Like this Raze bit was so good, man. I want to go watch it again, honestly, right now. Let's stop the podcast, but it was so good.
Honestly,
so shout out to go on, Lauren.
I just love that instantly Liquid don't half-ass it. They have come out and they've gone, right, we're going to pick up arguably one of the best out there. We've been looking at it. We've been taking our time. And they just come out and do this, right? You know what I mean? Like, and I don't think people realize how much of a big deal it is that officially Scream has quit playing Counter-Strike. Officially. Like, you look at the two different subreddits, right? You look at Valorant and Counter-Strike, and obviously one's substantially larger than the other, but like, the threat of Scream leaving was huge. Like, this guy was like a household name. People made like tributes to him in Counter-Strike. They're like, oh, he was such a, you know, a pillar of it. So like Liquid capitalizing on this, they get it. Like Liquid get it. And right now they're just destroying the scene. Like they picked up good coaches everywhere. They're investing and they just do it right. You know what I mean? Like shout out to Liquid. Whoever's like behind that, fucking hell yeah.
Hold on, I have a basketball reference I need to cook up again. Lauren, in your CS encyclopedia brain, what was the highest level that Scream got to? What was his major win if you look back to his CS career?
Oh Christ, I don't know, dude. I mean, the thing is, like,
did he win a major? Did he win anything crazy? Was there like a hot streak? Maybe the chat can tell me. The chat's talking about right now how they feel bad for Fun Plus Phoenix because their announcement was the tournament. It's basically on Wikipedia saying that's their announcement. They don't even get a tweet. Just like, yeah, this is the roster.
I'd say like honestly, the big thing with him, and this because when I casted Counter-Strike, it was very old, but I mean his part in Very Games, what they did was very important. Right. I mean, they were one of the first teams to ever push NIP that broke the original script, and then instantly that's put him on this plateau of like everyone's now paying attention to this guy. Who is he? Then they become Envy, and then Envy go on this tear for a good old time. I mean, these guys won
Titan first, was
a great deal of like S tier. Yeah, I mean, Very Games and Titans, Games, Titan, Envy, G2, like all the ones that played in these French rosters. I mean, the thing is that this guy has done incredibly well, but I'd say his peak was very early. I think he came in and did so well very early in his career. But he was, and I hate to say it, and it's not meant to be a discredit to him. He was a one-dimensional player, so you had to have the right roster around him. And when the rest of the scene evolved, he wasn't quite as able to fit in as much. He was still incredibly talented, but was he up to par with the other fraggers? I don't think so. So again, it's like, you know, in my mind, I kind of put him in the same realm as Shox, who was also this incredible fragger, incredible presence in the game, but he was a little bit more well-rounded. Scream's ability was also based on the fact, one, he came in early and he just tore apart some of the big names. He was stylish. He made this brand for himself. Again, brand power.
Beautiful. And he's beautiful.
He's a handsome motherfucker. Look at that guy's hair. look at how he
every time I see that dude, I'm like, fuck this guy. And his gaming talent, his beautiful face.
It's just like I said, the thing for me was that Scream is actually a really good pickup technically for someone like Fish123 because they have the core 4. If you can put him in the right role and you leave him to that role, he will be phenomenal for you. Maybe 5 years down the line, will he get one-dimensional? Maybe. I don't fucking know. Give the man a new challenge and see what he does, right? Like, that's different. But for now, he's in the perfect place with the perfect team. So I'm super excited to see what he can achieve. And if they gel together, because honestly, I was a little worried that this was going to turn into something. I know. I don't even want to talk about it. It sounds kind of shitty. It's like, well, because the problem that when I look at Liquid now in the most critical way, do they have the opping potential that other teams have right now? No. And that's a huge factor. We've seen switch-ups in roles to try and accommodate that. Now, people were throwing around the name Smooya for a while. Now, I don't think he's committing to Valorant, if I'm honest. He's probably still trying to commit to Counter-Strike for now. But would he potentially, as a personality, gel better with that Fish123 roster? You could debate that. He's very similar to Artis in the way he is, the way his like personality is. I mean, British players are very similar in the approach. Let's put it that way. So I think that was always a really interesting topic and something we might see down the line is that ever brought up as a discussion point again if he does dip back into this. But now that roster is sick. I hope they gel on a personal level though.
I think there's a few holes there for sure. I think that you're gonna have to give this team the benefit of a month or two to kind of put together like all the things that we talked about. Like these were all guys that were working, maybe not working full-time jobs, but definitely had concerns for resources. And I think the same can be said for a team in North America, a team like I don't know who's a new signee there, like Envy or 100 Thieves or something like that. Now that they've got the 100 Thieves is not a good example because they've had the resources for a while now, but Envy would be my pick to see watch them grow over time based on the fact that they can all kind of commit fully and not have to worry about, oh shit, my mouse pad's messed up or whatever. They're gonna have all this. They're gonna have all these resources, which I think is gonna be great. So shout out to Liquid. We can't wait to see what they do. But for now, we have to throw it to a break because we have a lot to talk about for the Faze Ignition series. We're gonna bring in Sideshow and we're gonna go real deep onto all the tournament happenings over the last weekend, and we're gonna jump into the power rankings as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Valoranting. I'm WTFmoses, joined by Pansy and Velly. And for the first time, I think we're going to be getting ready to bring in our very esteemed guest, the man himself,
I love him.
Sideshow, Mr. Josh Wilkinson. Welcome to the show. I'm not sure if you're there. Are you ready? There he is, the man himself.
What's up? I am. I'm still here.
How you doing?
Yeah, how's it going? I'm doing very well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've just been watching these games over the last couple of weeks, so they've been incredibly entertaining. It really feels like the whole scene has elevated massively over the last month or so, to the point where it's insanely entertaining now.
Absolutely. And for those of you who don't know Mr. Josh Wilkinson here, he is a Overwatch League commentator. He's been doing analysis on videos specifically for Valorant, and has become a bit of a household name in the Valorant subreddit, or the competitive subreddit, where he's been doing his video VOD breakdowns. So we thought, why not get the big brain himself in here to talk about this last tournament with the Faze Invitational. For those of you who did not watch it, we'll give you a quick breakdown of the bracket and what happened. So Sideshow, looking at the overall bracket here, I think there was basically everybody that you would want to see in this tournament did participate. There was a few standouts. Obviously, Sentinels and TSM was the big draw, but also the come up of Immortals. I want to get your thought on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think Immortals have gone through some turbulent times recently because they were a team that originally, when they first got started, I was a big fan of their roster. The coaching staff, it comes from the Overwatch League as well, and I think they had a very Overwatch League philosophy to it, like a big trialing process, a lot of statistical analysis as well. It wasn't just, who are your friends? Do you want to sign them? Or picking up big names. They really tried to get bang for their buck. So I was a big fan of that, and I like the strategic approach for the team. I think they struggled to find their identity a bit, especially because Stanny's their IGL, but he was on the Cypher role, and it always felt weird for him. Like, I don't think he was really able to play his best in that situation. And now they've swapped up a lot of the roles, and they've got like a really good system. I think they've figured out their foundation, and they've started building upon that, especially with a roster change as well. So yeah, this was a breakout performance from them, especially being able to beat Gen G, who I consider to be like one of the most strategic teams in North America, to be able to come out and beat like the fraggy teams and also to be able to outplay the strategic teams. Yeah, that's really good from Immortals. And they're back to getting in these like solid third place finishes. They finished third in so many tournaments, which is a positive and a negative, I suppose. Like, they can't break into the top, but it really is a positive for a roster that you didn't expect too much of when they first got signed, because no one had heard of the players.
And Gen G kind of followed that script to me as well. They're kind of they're struggling with consistency as well. But ultimately, the victors were TSM. We'll jump into the whys and hows in just a little bit, but they did take it. Wardell took the MVP of the tournament, which I think they did use a Twitter poll to determine that at the end, and they had, you know, I don't think they really. It wasn't. I've always said, first of all, congrats to Wardell, but I kind of felt like Hayes would have been a good candidate as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Hayes was the guy that really stepped up the most for TSM across this tournament. He had the biggest performance compared to his usual. But I mean, Wardell is still Wardell. He's still putting out monster performances all the time for them. That's not enough to get you the wins. You need the rest of the guys to step up, and that's why I think Hayes deserved a lot of credit in this tournament. But he was still, the whole squad did really well here.
Yeah, just to echo that as well. Like,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just real briefly, especially on Ascent, I think you saw Hayes finding some real good form on the Omen specifically, and his ability to kind of draw out fakes and kill rotations in that role was almost paramount to their win. So I think, as I said, Wardell is always going to be the fan favorite. You're always going to get that off kind of Twitter votes. I think personally maybe Sabrosa up there as well, but what Hayes did for them in some specific moments was, I personally think, a little bit more valuable. But again, that's just, it's just my hot take.
Yeah, him being off the stage as well, though, so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the big difference is kind of their compositions gave a little bit more flexibility for the whole team to get involved. And when you're going against a team like Sentinels that kind of has that inherently, where even their support players, Sick on Sage, he had some tremendous moments in the tournament, but ultimately it was TSM, and it came really down to the wire in two separate instances, both in their upper bracket meeting as well as the grand finals. So let's talk a little bit about another team that was brand new, and obviously has a lot of history in Overwatch, which was Faze's new roster in this tournament. Yeah. I'm going to let you go 100% on this one there, Josh. So why don't you just kind of break down this roster and their histories for us?
Okay, so I'll tell you guys about the players themselves. Do you want me to start with any particular person there from the Faze squad?
Let's start with Corey. We'll start with Corey, the centerpiece.
Sure. Yeah, because Corey's like the guy that this team was built around, I feel. And he's a player that's been playing on genuinely trash teams in the Overwatch League. Like, he has been a star on arguably the worst team in the league back-to-back seasons. The Washington Justice have done absolutely nothing since their inception. But Corey himself has been a talent that on the hit scan role, which is obviously the most similar kind of thing to playing Valorant. It's got that same kind of, or not the same kind of aiming style, but a similar kind of one. He's been amazing. He's absolutely been one of the best, if not the best, in North America that we had in Overwatch. Played for the North American World Cup team as well, and was easily a standout talent on that roster. You could also see just when he posted those clips at the beginning of moving over to Valorant, just playing it casually as well, that the guy's raw aim, just his ability to track and the flicks and his manipulation of the crosshair on the screen is outrageous. This guy's got raw talent like very, very few people. And he also is able to translate that into being able to frag within the game as well against top players. So I think there's a lot of promise for this guy. He's really good. His
raw aim is just disgusting. Just absolutely disgusting. I can't, honestly, it's unintelligible. Even watching those Overwatch clips, it's just like, how do you, with all the stuff that's happening on the screen, how can you maintain focus at that level is insane.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I mean, the aim style is so different between the two games, right? I mean, in Overwatch, your aim is always perfectly steady, no matter how much you're moving around. So it's much more of like a Quake style aiming, but the acceleration on the player models is enormous. Like if you're just AD strafing, there's almost no slowdown between you doing that. So the people that can aim at the top of Overwatch have some ridiculous raw aim. It's about translating that, I think, when they go over to playing a game like Valorant, because what's important is not so much your ability to hit crazy flicks or your tracking. It's the crosshair placement and being smart about how you take fights and setting up aim duels for yourself. And then, you know, that raw aim can also help you in the situation. But Corey's looking great, honestly. He's maybe my favorite player, along with Marv on Faze.
Yeah, and definitely, and I mean Marv is kind of like the only guy that has a CS more of a CS background. But just not to mention, like, a lot of other pros talk about the general the high level of all the Overwatch players' aim and their ability to kind of track and maintain accuracy in the face of like skill usage and utility usage, that kind of thing. So I guess that brings us to our next guy, which is Zachary.
Yeah, Zachary is a really interesting one as well, because I want Zachary to succeed more than anybody else on this roster, because he's a guy that got a really bad time in Overwatch. He moved up to one of the most, I don't know, it's like, it's the team where they have a huge fan base, but everyone also loves to hate them. And so he played for the Dallas Fuel, and the Dallas Fuel have so many issues. They're still having a lot of issues. And Zachary he honestly got memed on in the Overwatch scene. He wasn't a terrible player, but because he didn't put up big performances, and because the system was just broken around him, and because Zachary himself didn't perform that well on the team, he just got sat on the bench quite a bit, and people didn't really respect him as a top player after he'd come out of Contenders the Contenders is like the tier 2 scene. So he came out of tier 2 looking really strong, joined an Overwatch League team, and then didn't really go anywhere. So I really want this guy to succeed within Valorant. And I mean, at the moment, his initial showings have not been too great, but I still think, like, or at least I hope, that he can find success here and actually showcase his talents across another esport, because I think he got a bit of not an unfair showing, but he definitely got a lot of vitriol from the fans.
Well, it's also tough when you're put in a position where you're not really, you know, like you said, it's like I look at esports in the same way I look at basketball. You can have a star player and you can have role players on the team, but if the overall chemistry just isn't there, you're not going to be able to perform at the highest level. So I mean, you can be the third best guy on the floor and be on the best team, but you could also be the best player on a team and be the worst in the league. So an unfortunate position for Zachary. Raucus, however, is a bit of I'm not sure if it's a different story for him. He seems to have some fanfare behind him from, I believe it was the Houston Outlaws, if I remember correctly. Yeah,
and he's another weird one, honestly, as well, because a lot of people... I mean, Raucus is an Overwatch World Cup winner. I mean, not only alongside Corey as well, but not only has he played in multiple World Cups for Team USA, so well known as one of the best flex supports, so used to play the healing role, but it's still a role that requires a lot of aim as well. It's like a hybrid damage and healing role. And he was also a player that was heavily criticized for kind of game sense and positioning mistakes. And I believe that was fair. He made a lot of game sense and positioning mistakes in his support role, but he also added so much to the team in terms of his leadership and communication that they felt like they could never sub him out. So he was stuck in this weird position where the rest of the league was outpacing him in terms of skill and decision making, but he was so vital to the team. He brought so much in terms of his intangibles that he was always being fielded as well. So he continued to walk this weird line where he was always good enough to be fielded at the absolute elite level. I mean, not the absolute elite level, actually, but at the elite level in terms of overall Overwatch. He was still playing in the Overwatch League, even though he's playing for like a middle of the pack team. But
bringing value in that way is always important as well. Level.
Yeah, sure. And I think that it is weird, though, seeing him transition into the almost like star role within Faze, playing the Jet, playing the AWPer, not really entering on it, but being given an AWP whenever possible. That is a weird transition for a lot of Overwatch people to see. Raucus going from a bit of a like criticized but incredibly important role within a middle of the pack team as like a healer to going to becoming or trying to become one of the star roles within the Faze Valorant squad. So that's something that I'm still processing as well. But I think that he's probably going to be an important part of their teamwork and leadership structure as well.
I would also expect that there's going to be some shifts in roles over time because the roster's so new. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some, I imagine, some adjustments and changes. I mean, they had heart. They definitely had heart in their attempts, but obviously heart doesn't really count for much when you're going up against well-practiced teams like TSM and Sentinels. And if you want to break through even out of the quarters and semifinal window, you're going to have, you know, all pistons firing at the maximum efficiency. So that kind of brings us to our next guy, kind of the standard that you mentioned earlier, who is Marved. Baby Bay, who had some CS experience as well. However, some controversial CS experience. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about Baby Bay?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about his CS experience, but I have seen the YouTube video of him getting banned live in a match, so that was a lot of fun. That was a bit of controversy that, like, started out with his Overwatch career as well, but he's played for so long in Overwatch at the highest level, you know, playing on LAN constantly, improving himself, that I don't think many of his fans would even remember that was a controversy back in the past. But certainly Baby Bay within the Overwatch League really grew into his own throughout this season. I think it was a surprise to a lot of people to see him make the swap away from the Overwatch League because he was so good. He was playing at his best when he left. His ability on the snipers, on the hit scan, the roles that are the most similar to the aiming within Valorant. He was a truly top-level talent for his team, the Atlanta Reign. And he did a great job of it. He's also a really funny guy, very well-loved as well. And he's just got this like weird like Chad persona, but doesn't take himself too seriously. That's so funny to interact with. Yeah, I mean,
those blue eyes.
He's just a great guy, but he was so in the wrong role in this tournament on Cypher. Get this guy out of Cypher prison. It is appalling to watch him on Cypher. Like, he doesn't have the brain for the lurker. I mean, I'm not saying that his brain doesn't understand the game, but I'm saying that his brain doesn't work in the same way as a lurker. He likes to take the challenges. He's facing people constantly. He's trying to make stuff happen. He's not working on his timings to try and get in some sneaky angle or play a lurk. So he doesn't take to the Cypher role properly. I know he was in my chat yesterday when I was reviewing a bunch of the Faze VODs as well. And so he was telling me some little snippets of like what was going on behind the scenes there as well. And he said that he just filled the role because nobody on his team wanted to fill that role as well, which in my opinion is not a particularly great way of deciding.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a particularly great system.
No doubt. Well, I mean, it's great to have all these histories as well, especially when you have like, I mean, the alpha and the omega of Overwatch League to Valorant examples, you know, sitting across from you in Sinatra, and that's going to be kind of the model that, and unfortunately, a lot of these guys are going to be judged against. So I suppose if you were to look at Faze as an overall, and we can go through the Valorant stuff now, Daniel, as we kind of talk about this, is what did you kind of get from a sense, not maybe individually, but how much of this and who are you going to be looking at as the you know, Corey obviously has had the most time in and we've seen him the most in Valorant, but if you were to configure this team in the most optimal way, in your opinion, how would it go?
I mean, that's a really good question, isn't it? Because this team has apparently been scrimming for a few weeks with at least most of the squad. I think they were maybe still trialing the last person or last couple of people, but they've been playing together with this group for about a month now, but they still just didn't know their roles until right before the tournament, and they only decided their IGL in day 2 of the tournament as well. So this is still a very, very beginning team. And if you think back to the Sentinels, for example, with Sinatra, when they first debuted in their tournament without any scrim time and without a full roster, they looked just as poor as this as well, and they improved so quickly. So I think there's still a lot of room for this team to improve, but things like, I mean, the defaults and executes were just totally non-existent. But to your question, people just did look lost on certain roles. Like, Corey makes perfect sense in his role. Marv needs more time on the Omen because his Omen is nowhere near his Brimstone play, but it's still the right role for him to be on. I think that Baby Bay should absolutely not be on the Cypher. I don't know who should be on that role because I don't think any of them play like lurkers. I think there's got to be some questions asked about how this team was even formulated in the first place if you had no concept of what role people were playing. That doesn't seem like a good way to build a roster to me. But all right, I hope they figure it out. Someone needs to take that role, though, and it sure as hell shouldn't be Baby Bay. I think that he should be on the entry AWPing role. It seems to fit his style a bit more. Whereas Raucus was able to AWP to a reasonable level, but he wasn't entering effectively, and he was taking the AWP in too many passive angles, I think. And I think it's just wasted when you use the hero like that. You need a bit more action on it. So I'm not saying Raucus is bad, but I think Baby Bay would maybe be better suited in that role. And he's also just not a Cypher, so that would be a total waste. And as for Zachary, I mean, he had the worst fragging out of any of them throughout the tournament. But I think some of that was due to their dreadful Ascent gameplay, where he was playing the Sova because they play it without a Sage. And he needs way more time on the Sova because the ability usage from Zach on the Sova was pretty poor, and like his understanding of where to be placed and how to get value out of the hero was lacking. But again, I think that's something that will just develop with time because there's such a new group of players.
I kind of wonder as well how much of like Jason R's role had to be replaced. And obviously that's a bit of a weird situation. Like they never did play together or anything like that. But if you're sitting there wondering, you know, who could have filled in a different way, I'm not sure if Jason R would be replacing one of the Overwatch League players that eventually came across, like a Zachary or maybe Marv in that situation. But you have to wonder if not the removal, but the non-start that was Jason R had any effect on team composition over time. It's something we'll probably just never know because it's just not going to happen regardless. So, Faze, tremendously interesting as far as an experimental roster is concerned, considering the stranglehold that CS players had on there. So I'll now direct some questions to our other co-casters here. Pansy, what do you think of the notion that Jason R and maybe CS players have a bit of an expectation that they want that this game is for them? And this was something that came up on the broadcast, is that, you know, Jason R and some of the CS guys out there kind of feel that these Overwatch League players are not going to be bringing the same level of skill or the same level of understanding. Do you think that is 100% true, and that this is something that they can overcome over the next little bit? So we'll start with Pansy and we'll kind of go around the table with that question.
I think if we're looking at the start of a brand new title, right, you've got to kind of take into account what's a safe bet. And Valorant is incredibly close to Counter-Strike. So the safe bet is you have the core, you know, let's say 3 players. So kind of like Sentinels, they have kind of the 3 Counter-Strike players with a dash of Overwatch coming in and a little bit of Apex in there. But again, they can be a little bit more characterized by very unique styles. But you also then get the fundamentals of the Counter-Strike surround, right? Which is kind of what I see as the easiest go-to. I think that's the safest bet. Well, no, not the safest. The safest is 5 Counter-Strike players. But I think that I think the Faze experiment will be very interesting because, as I said, yes, they've got a little bit of that Counter-Strike element because some of the players were previous players, but they weren't exactly tier 1, tier 2. They were, you know, a little bit more puggy, a little bit more open to just kind of like free agents. They weren't exactly the main names. But I think Faze is one of those rosters where I'm really curious to see what they do. How they're going to play on the fundamental side of things, because as I said, stylistically they're great. They've got some spicy aim. They've got some very good individual players, but this game has already gone beyond that. You can't just be an individual player. So I want to see if they can get those fundamentals super quick and apply them. Until that point, I think it could just be that experiment of what if, and then we're going to have to see them bring in either a coach role or someone to kind of give them the structure there, because until that point, I don't know what to expect from them.
Velly?
I mean, look at Sinatra and his start in Valorant competitively. Sinatra didn't have the best start, and I'm fact checking to make sure I'm not talking out of my ass right now. But I mean, top 6, top 8, top 6 before he even sniffed first place. Shit ain't gonna happen overnight. And you know what? Like, yeah, I get it. CS players, they're better off coming to Valorant and having a better head start than other players because the games are similar enough. But eventually other players are going to get better. So, I mean, yeah, FaZe sucked it up. They lost against, Titty, Fat Boy, and Pancakes, and, you know, was able to beat him the second time around. But those struggles are bound to happen. By the way, is it Tighty or Titty? I don't know. But the point I'm getting to is that give FaZe, I like Titty, Fat Boy, and Pancakes. give Faze time because yes, like Josh said, they suck on Ascent and they suck when it comes to adaptability in general. Like they give up 6 to 9 rounds at a time. But other than that, you know, if this doesn't work, I say give it about a month and a half. If the same results are happening, then we start to look into this team. If they can adapt, can they be as good as these CS players that are moving on over? And that's when we start asking the big boy questions. But until then, give them time. Teams have to mesh. They have to build chemistry. They have to get better. And it's not going to happen overnight, especially in a game that's rising so fast competitively, and the skill gap is just, you know, shooting up even higher every week and win the tournament.
I wonder a little bit about like, again, this is kind of the Sinatra model, and this is more my outside looking in, so I'll lean on you, Josh, for this, is that it seems that the best Overwatch players are the ones that were able to adapt and learn. And in an environment like Overwatch, where the meta is maybe not constantly shifting, but the agents are being rebalanced, the maps and the agents and which ones to pick for the optimal performance level, you have to be like encyclopedic in your knowledge and your application of who fits where. So do you think that Sinatra, one of his main skills, Josh, is his ability to adapt and learn quickly, in addition to obviously his natural talent? And if you look at FaZe with that in mind, do they have the same level of adaptability and flexibility that, say, Sinatra would bring?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Sinatra is the kind of player that, I mean, the famous story about Sinatra in the Overwatch League is that he started out an 18-year-old guy, a pure rookie talent with a lot of individual ability, and he didn't really live up to the big price tag that had been rumored for his signing until they brought on the best coach in the whole of Overwatch, this guy called Krusty, who just explained, not explained in a literal sense how to play, but taught Sinatra and the rest of the team as well how to think about the game. And I think these wider ideas have helped develop Sinatra to a point where he can apply the same principles in whatever game he goes into. And he's going to be able to learn from other people and think about the game and model it in a really good way to be able to succeed. And I mean, none of the other guys on FaZe have had that kind of tutelage within the Overwatch scene, but they've demonstrated, at least some of them, the ability to be able to perform at that level and soak up that knowledge. My question is, who's delivering this knowledge for FaZe? There is no one on the team. I mean, you talk about these previous guys having CS experience, but Marv's not going to tutor the rest of the team in terms of how to play the fundamentals. And you talk about like Baby Bay having previous CS, like semi-pro kind of understanding. That's 5 years ago. That's 5 years of only grinding Overwatch, like a long time ago. I think it doesn't really make sense to compare somebody that played CS and tried to go pro in it before they came into the Overwatch League to veteran CS players, especially when you consider the comparison with Sentinels, where it's 1 and arguably 2, if you include Zoms, Overwatch players that are surrounded by other CS talents. This team doesn't have veteran CS players to teach them fundamentals. I also like to talk about Hip from NIP over in Europe, who used to play on the team Hip Hip Hip. He was the only Overwatch player in that team, and he's talked in interviews extensively about Fearoth and how important he has been to teaching him different things, like the concept of spacing and trades and communicating different areas of the map that people might have timinged you and got behind you. These are all areas where you can just tell FaZe are enormously lacking. So I think the question is less so, can these Overwatch players absorb the knowledge? I think they can. They've already proved that they can get to the top in one game. That normally means, especially in a game that's as competitive as Overwatch, especially when you're a player that's competing against many, many different regions. It's not like they're just the best in North America, but they only played in North America. They're competing on a global level. They're competing for their spots against people all around the world. These guys can play. They can learn and understand concepts, but who's going to be there to teach them? So I think that the number one thing that FaZe can do right now is hire a coach from CS. I think if you're not going to make a roster change to add in a CS player, because the fact that there's 4 Overwatch players does worry me. I think it's doable, but it does concern me for the future in terms of how quickly they can learn and pick up all those skills. But the number one thing they can do is hire a coach from CS, because there's a lot missing from their game at the moment that a coach could add way faster than these players would be able to figure it out themselves.
Can you imagine, like Lauren, if they picked up a Dren, the newly released coach from Liquid?
Sure,
that Moses
It'd be
took
pretty
over.
Good. I mean, I think I said it could be applied throughout. I don't think you even need to go to the highest end of Counter-Strike coaches. The fundamentals, as you said, trading effectively.
They got the money.
These sort of yeah, you're right. I mean, why not go for the best that's out there? But no, you're right. It's the fact that they just need that, and obviously as players, it's incredibly hard to couple learning fundamentals that keep you on par while also refining your own abilities and your own kind of pacing to how you want to approach the game. So it's like, yeah, I think it has to be a coach, 100%. A coach, a good hands-on manager, whatever you want to do, ideally a coach. They just need it to give them that structure, that fundamental approach that will allow them to flourish within the styles. Because as I said, I think Overwatch players are fantastic as additions because they do see a little bit out of the box. They can bring something unique. They bring so much more to the plate, and you don't just get the same old fucking washed up NA players on repeat, right? Like, I'm tired of that shit. I don't need to see an ESEA pug mix again. Show me something new, and that's what I've really enjoyed seeing is the stylistic approach, and you can kind of lend from that. But because of how close this game is still as it stands in the current meta to Counter-Strike and its fundamentals at any given point, you're gonna need that understanding as something you don't even think about. It's not meant to be something you consider. It has to be intuitive, it has to be instant. And for them, as I said, the coach would be the best role, I think, but it is super early. I mean, we're being super judgmental, but it's just off the theory of who they are, right? The theory of 5 Overwatch players is very hard to apply to a game right now in comparison. So yeah, I think the fastest way, 100% would be a good coach that they respect. I don't know what sort of players they are. Like, if they bring in a Dren, do they give a fuck who he is? Do they know who the fuck this guy is? Does that compare to their Overwatch performances in their minds? I don't know these players. And it's a thing that happened in Counter-Strike. You've got to get a coach and someone who meshes with the team, that blends with them, that they respect, and they'll actually listen to. I don't know these players. That's one thing where I disconnect, is who would they potentially listen to in that regard?
I don't think, in terms of like speaking specifically to the players, I don't think any of them have big egos, especially a big egos in a brand new game. Like, even the most talented player, Corey, is probably one of the most coachable as well. So I feel like this would be a team that would respond well to a coach that, as long as the coach was, you know, willing to work with them as well. And I think like they'd see immediate improvements from just copying a bunch of defaults from another team to just give them that basis, and then working on some of the just fundamental stuff. And I think they'd immediately see improvements. They obviously will see improvements because this is a brand new team. They're going to improve, but they'll see astronomical improvements if they make that kind of move, I think.
One thing I want to point out, Moses.
Go, Velly, go.
It's actually it's a really interesting stat, and the reason why having a knowledgeable coach from the CS background is definitely the answer. There were some notes that I took. And against Cloud9, they lost stretches of 6 and 5 rounds on split, 7 and then 4 in a row to close out the half on Haven, where they lost. Against Sentinels, they lost 12 straight rounds and then 9 straight on Ascent. Like, that is so unacceptable, man. And you got to wonder if a tactical timeout was called and they had a knowledgeable coach help them out and say, hey, we can help you out. This is how you change up. This is how you adapt. This is how you prep against this type of push. It would help them out, like, immensely. Because the fact is, when they win, they get some convincing wins. But then when they lose, like, outside of the Sentinels game, they're really close. And those losses are avoidable. They just don't know what the fuck they're doing when they're getting punched in the mouth. Like, they look like a turtle when you flip the motherfucker on his back. They just can't get up at all. And you can run circles around them. So, yeah, I highly agree. But I thought that was extremely important to look at. Just the amount of rounds that they lose in a row. It is actually, like, it's mesmerizing because those numbers shouldn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's you know what keeps bothering me, and this is more of like a personality, like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do this kind of thing? Is this whole Jason R thing fucking bothers me, dude. He had
Why does it upset you so much?
Because, man, like, he's why not just stay and try it? You know, like, you have this opportunity to stay and try something. Because you don't have this crazy ass reputation of a tier 1 Counter-Strike player. Like, the best he's done as far as, you know, like, he's got a lot of experience. So, like, Sideshow was just talking about how impactful he could have been to try and teach this team some stuff, you know, and to grow in the same. What's that?
Why would you want to have to be that? Wouldn't you rather just slot into another roster?
What are you doing? You're streaming. Like, do you want to be a competitor or not?
Well,
okay,
that's debatable. I mean, he's also had that discussion thrown at him in Counter-Strike. It was the fact that even Simple said it. It was like, why don't you come back and compete? We see you doing this crazy shit all the time. Simple like Jason R, and he still kind of just stuck around streaming. I mean, the point is, like, in my mind,
you gotta have
he'd end up in a Hiko situation. he'd end up in the Hiko situation where clearly he doesn't gel with the roster. Clearly he does not want to play within that roster. And if he doesn't want to, then it would be a shit choice. Why the fuck would you do that? If he wants to sit there and play with, at least a core element of players that he knows, fair enough. I don't fucking blame you. It's like if you're going to then sit and grind for the next couple of months living and breathing this game with these guys, you'd probably want to know who you're doing that with. You know what I mean?
Are you going to tell me that being on Faze, even for a short amount of time as an experiment, would not have been overall beneficial for him, considering all the things we talked about before, the juice you get on social, the auto hosts,
he doesn't need
the fact that you're going to have the Faze, all that promotion, all these other things, and you have the. Well,
he's already done that shit. He's done that. He's done that shit in CS. If he wants to be a competitor, he has to come at an approach, in my mind, where he feels it's a valuable investment of his time. If he doesn't feel this roster has longevity, why invest your time into it? And do you know what? It sucks because maybe in theory he could have been a great coach for that, but would he actively want to play in it? Probably not. It's a time investment, right? That's him then stepping away from streaming as much as he does, full commitment towards this, and it cuts him off from joining other potential teams. I mean, now the word of Nitro's out and about. He's probably going to be tied up pretty soon. But there's room for Jason R away from that, in my opinion, because you don't have to be best friends with your teammates, but you've got to respect them. And if he doesn't have that, if he doesn't want to work on that and sit and invest in it and see the potential, that's his choice, and that's completely fine, in my opinion.
She's spitting right now.
I understand. I'm not going to say I completely disagree, but I suppose that if I'm another team and I'm looking at Jason R, and I'm speaking on from a platform that I don't know the guy, I don't know his intentions, but I suppose just from a chess piece moves only, is that if I'm a team that says, okay, we want to take a bet on a guy that, Jason R has a ton of experience. Obviously he's got all the things that I imagine a player like Hiko would want. Hiko is in a lot different a position. I think that Overwatch has a much more transferable skills than PUBG did in the case of 100 Thieves roster. We're early enough now that if you wanted to be the best player or one of the bigger influences on a team that has a lot of potential, I would have at least liked to have explored that for a little while. And I think it's very brave of him to walk away from it, because that's obviously you're sticking to your ideals, which I completely respect. But from an experimentation / experience standpoint, I would rather get the experience of playing on a roster with a team that I could maybe have a little bit more say in. I wonder how much of it came down to the captaincy issue between him and Corey. Not to mention maybe just the deal that he was sold before he signed versus what ended up happening. Maybe if he had better clarity as to where things were going to go, it would have been smoother, or maybe we wouldn't be having this discussion at all, because he never would have been signed. But if I'm looking back at potential, if I'm making all these decisions as a professional player that is not past my prime, but moving into a new title that is away from my base, I should say, I would like to have seen him pursue it just a little bit to see what works, because the worst thing that you would want to be is looking backwards over your shoulder at a team like Sentinels or something like that you said no to, and if Faze is able to mold themselves into a top team, you're going to be in a position where you're going to be forming a mixed team over whoever happens to be left over. And even though it would be nice to think that Nitro and Hiko and Jason R would all come together to make a CS core team with maybe one or two more role players, there's not a lot of talent left out there yet, and the organic growth of talent isn't at a point where maybe he'll find the same success he could have had, but really we're never going to find that out. So I just from a stats and where I would have liked to have seen the scene gone, I would have liked to see that experiment, and I just kind of feel bad that we never got to.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, that's a nice idea.
That's a lot of damn Pringles. I just noticed that.
Oh yeah, that is a lot of Pringles. Yeah, the Overwatch League has got a sponsorship with Pringles, so I like to make the most of it. Faze trialed a roster at the beginning that had Sam and Def on it, right? And I actually thought that roster almost had a bit more promise. The people fit the roles a lot better. It seemed like a well-constructed thing. And at the time, I had assumed that either Sam or Def were fill-ins for Jason R if he decided to join that roster. And at that point, you only have two Overwatch players. You have Corey and you have Zachary that were on that team at that point. So that's the more of the direction that I thought FaZe was going to go into. And it seems like instead they pivoted hard to going with Corey and surrounded him with Overwatch guys as well, which is really different. I mean, in terms of Jason R and his ability to join other teams, I don't think you have to worry about the talent level in Valorant. We are so early on that there's going to be so much new talent coming into the scene. The worst thing that's going to happen for the NA scene, and it's already started to happen, is that every new amateur team gets picked up as a full team, and no one tries to create these good rosters of mixing good talent together. You get this lazy orgs creating these teams that just lock everybody into contracts and stop good teams actually being created. So that's the thing that's really going to hurt the NA scene, is that kind of stuff happening, and the lack of fluidity. Because over in EU, because they aren't locked into the contracts, they're going to be able to just, if an org comes in, they're going to have their pick of the litter in terms of picking apart the best little pieces from other teams. So I think that's actually going to hurt North America in some sense. But in terms of the talent that's going to come up, there's going to be so much. I mean, the amount of amateur teams that have had a rise through the tournaments and still looked decent, and like the fact that FaZe can put together a roster that is brand new and still be beating other teams that have been trying for a while to get into the top 10. I mean, we talk about FaZe looking sloppy, and my God, did they look sloppy because they're a brand new team, but they're still beating other teams that have been around playing as amateur teams for a month or two now and have failed to get into the top 10. Like the scene is still really nascent, and especially very it's like a primordial soup at the sub top 10 level. There's still so much that you can create there.
I think that's a great call out, and really there's a couple of situations that really will probably leave a lot of room to jump onto a roster. 100 Thieves is going to blow that team up. They're blowing that team up. It's going to happen. I don't want to talk about absolutely. So I mean, and then you have a team like T1, which they are not going to be cool with the way things are going there. There's I personally question, and this is again as purely as an observer who has no insight into the personalities or the talks behind the scenes there. But I just really question whether or not that if the hype was their downfall. Skadoodle coming out of retirement with quite a large stream presence. Brax obviously having this prodigy that was never given the opportunity to reach his prime. There's a lot to be said for sitting on the sidelines for a lot of period of time and then coming in and expecting to be the best, or having the expectation to be the best on your shoulders. So I wonder what T1's going to do as well. But realistically, I'm seeing some team names thrown around in the chat, like EG, NRG, Rogue, Misfits, SK, Fnatic. I don't think we see EG enter the scene for the same reason we don't see NRG and Fnatic enter the scene in the way that they're going to right now. EG is, like, from my understanding, is in a bit of shambles right now behind the scenes as far as their org and whatnot is concerned. And really, I don't think we're going to see a lot of new investment until we have teams that have some success proven. And I would expect to see 100 Thieves probably drop a couple of players, take a big run at a player like Nitro, make another big splash, give Hiko something to feel good about, and try and base it around that, because Nitro brings a lot. And not to mention the draw that a player like Nitro on a roster would have for other top level players to come to him. I think that there's, like you said, Sideshow, we're still in this primordial state where things are so early that it's best now to just kind of wait and see. Which, again, just because I refuse to let go of a point until I have the last word, because that's my job as a host, I believe that Jason R did himself a disservice by not using this time right now to really push himself as a star caliber player, not to be successful on FaZe, but to get that next deal with that next roster for really big cash, while the getting's good, if you know what I mean. Because again, I'm going to abuse. Oh, damn it! Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
Shut up. Let's be honest. Nitro is 100% going to join that T1 roster. It's literally him going back to iBuyPower with Swag and AZK. Adren now could become the coach for it. Skadoodle, sadly, is probably going to be the one who would be cut out, if anyone, just because of the AWPing ability or opping ability.
Yep.
Sits way better with Nitro. Like, that roster is basically kind of iBuyPower at that point. You know what I mean? Before Nitro joined Liquid and went on that run. I mean, it makes big sense. It makes big sense to be the switch up there. I do wonder if it's going to happen. quickly, because I don't know what happens with Skadoodle, because I mean, him and Brax were kind of this, duo for a long time as well. I did think Skadoodle being the last addition was an interesting one as well, because honestly, that team needs an IGL. For me, like a solid IGL, a big voice in it, because they're from my recalling to many, many years ago, I mean, 2014, 2015, whatever, they were quite a quiet team. They weren't the big vocal voices in there. They weren't the Hikos. They weren't the kind of IGL natural kind of presence. That's why I really like the idea of Hiko originally going to T1, because I thought he could bring a nice bit of kind of solidarity and kind of consistency, I guess, to that role. But obviously they went with Skadoodle instead, which is completely fine short term. I think long term, though, Nitro would be the pickup if he commits. And that is pretty much the first tier 1 Counter-Strike player going across. Even though you could argue Nitro was in a slight slump towards the end of his career, Liquid was still very much a T1 team up at the very top. So it would be very, very interesting, because I feel as though Nitro's opping style would fit stylistically substantially better than Skadoodle. So I don't know if it's going to happen. I think it's the most obvious choice, considering there's already been leaks of them scrimming together, but we'll see.
Man, I hate, again, I don't know him, but I just question Skadoodle's like competitive drive at this stage of his career. He has the major win. He's in the Shroud inner circle, which obviously is going to make any efforts outside of competition very easy for him. He's got a huge following, and not to mention, he knows what the competitive grind is like, and I think having the amount of attention back onto him in a competitive mindset might just be maybe he's like, oh right, this is what this feels like to have this pressure again. I don't know. Best of luck to all these guys, but I just hope that for the fans and stuff like that, considering how impactful TSM and Sentinels have been, that we have more of that. And I would love more teams like T1, 100 Thieves, those big powerhouse rosters, to have that competition again as well.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Let's talk about the actual Sentinels versus TSM rivalry / trash talk, which I think has been amazing for everything. I cannot thank you enough, Hazed, for the gift of an interview that you gave me at the end of that series. Going into the chat about how they just straight up dislike Sentinels. So again, we'll come back to you, Sideshow. This Sentinels and TSM rivalry / whatever you want to call it. It's like the space race. They're pushing each other to the stratosphere, and it's been an absolute pleasure to watch. So just give me your initial reactions on the 2 matchups that we were blessed with in this last invitational.
Yeah, I think everyone expected some kind of rivalry for the top to include T1, but it's wonderful that it has been TSM and Sentinels vying for this top position, because TSM are the team that has previously just relied on, like a style that they kind of pioneered with Wardell going crazy on the Jet open. And then Sentinels have got such an aggressive counter style that has relied a lot on utility usage and great retakes. And then Sinatra just running in and like total disrespect retakes. It's just so cool to see these two teams with such wildly different styles consistently meet in the finals and then, or semifinals, and counter-striking each other so effectively. It's wonderful to see, because they're separated by a hair in all of these situations. And both the grand finals and when they met in the upper bracket finals, I guess it must have been, they were both just phenomenal matches that really could have gone either way. Both of those matches could have gone either way.
Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, it's what we kind of talked about very early on with these two. The stylistic mismatch in them is the fun part for me. TSM at the start were the hyper aggressive team that was in your face constantly, very confidence based players that could really shine, and obviously it was kind of the instant look towards Wardell as the player. So Rosa, these kind of two very stylish, very aggressive players. And then on the other side, you had Sentinels, who kind of rose in the shadows of TSM initially, as Sentinels didn't have a brilliant start. They kind of grew into it a fair amount, and then you saw the potential we were theory crafting kind of come together. It was that more, a little bit more passive in style and even agent pick to an extent. Like even look at this. I mean, you've got the Phoenix Jet combination on one side, and yet you don't have it on the other. Even in the agent picks, it's leaning towards the styles that they like to bring. And for Sentinels to take it away from TSM for a while has simply pushed TSM to then go a little bit deeper and kind of refine that aggressive style. And I think that kind of shone through in a great deal of these maps. And I was quite surprised that Sentinels weren't able to adapt on the fly. But again, it's just simply how good TSM are at this moment. But the adjustments the Sentinels have to make to come back and potentially win the next one is very minor. It's very small adjustments. It's not like, well, there it is. There's TSM at the top again forevermore. No. They go back and watch those like games back. I bet you next tournament they don't have the same issues, but it might mean they have to change up a little bit of their composition or be aware of how to play into it. So it's a beautiful matchup for styles.
And Velly, I mean,
so cool
yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, Velly, the adjustments from Sentinels within these matches weren't necessarily just to try and keep up with TSM, but I mean, looking at the strategy that TSM brought out of the gate, the counter strategy, the aggression, not to mention some of the role swaps. What did you kind of take away from TSM moving away from some of the more traditional lineups in order to really counteract and activate their players in various ways?
I think both of the teams actually did pretty well with that. Me, for one, I really love the Cypher play and the lack of Sage picks on some of the maps throughout the entirety of the tournament, right? It was really good. But in regards to strategy, I mean, you heard it from Sideshow, you heard it from Pansy. I'm going to say it for like the 11th time, right? TSM utilized their aggression so well to stop Sentinels. Whenever they tried to set up, whatever strats they had, they didn't give them any time at all. And I said it before the show started. I mean, Bind was incredible. It offered the best Valorant gameplay I have ever seen in my life, whether it was the aggression from TSM or Sentinel's job of putting TSM players to sleep one by one. It was so entertaining. And early on, like, we saw TSM slapping up Sentinels by securing early wins, and the economy was in their favor, right? But the fact that Sentinels brought it back and then we got overtime on the last possible map, can we talk about that, please? Like, Wardell, like the fact that Sentinels even slowed down Wardell, and Wardell was still pulling up and getting 6 shots to stop Sick, no pun intended. It was just incredible all around. I love the counter stratting. I love that we have pure dislike between these two teams. Now, I grew up watching Carbon and Final Boss. I don't know what y'all have in CS. What is it? Fnatic and Complexity. I don't know. I'm just naming teams, right? We have something special now. And to see these two teams battle at it, that's going to be fun. I think the most exciting part is going to see who that third team is going to be to jump into the equation. But other than that, the finals was beautiful. I love the innovation we're starting to see now. It's not just plain, Wardell holds some down, he kills 3 people to round is 1, right? We're seeing a lot more different gameplay. And we're starting to see identities within a lot of these players' play styles individually as well. So, yeah, that was it. I actually want to.
I do think, though.
I hope it keeps up.
Yeah, I do think, though, that there's something to be said about feeling better about Sentinels moving forward than TSM, even though they lost. Because TSM have been quite a one-dimensional team since they started. Like, they've pioneered certain metas within the North American scene, particularly the Phoenix gameplay. Like, a lot of the flashing through smokes and stuff, I think TSM was the progenitor of this kind of style, especially with the holding the angles with your AWPer via Wardell and having him take aggressive angles and then walking your Brim or your Phoenix into these aggressive places. But they really struggled to be able to deal with the Sentinels throwing aggression at them until they made this shift to run Sageless comps everywhere other than Split, and have Drone move over to the Sova. And now you've got a situation where they're kind of starting another meta of their own, where they've still got the Phoenix and they've still got the flashes through smokes and they've still got the Jet AWPer, but now they've also got the Sova to provide more vision and provide more execute potential and to push other AWPers off angles as well. So I love this adaptation from TSM, but it took them a couple of weeks to be able to figure that out and play it properly against the Sentinels. Whereas the Sentinels swapped from like one day to the next. They swapped their Haven comp to that one. Haven was their worst map by far. They swapped to that comp, copied the same stuff as TSM, and they are going from an overtime to beating them 13-8 from one day to the next.
Outright wins.
Sentinels adapts and evolves so fast. And so they did end up, they lose this tournament. They go 2-2 in the grand finals, but they have the map disadvantage, so they end up losing the series overall. But I feel like Sentinels
to the wire,
have
by the way,
way
not like
more
outright
styles.
or Yeah. And I want you to keep going with this point, but I wanted to bring something in because you're quantifying something that I've kind of felt in watching this team, is that it feels like Sentinels is pushing, and TSM was able to this time counteract and counter-strat them directly based on their last meeting. But you just nailed it, Josh, where you basically said that from one day to the next, Sentinels was able to adapt and change very rapidly. And this is why I kind of go back to what I was talking about with Sinatra, with his ability to adapt as a player and to learn new things as well. I'm thinking of what it would be like when they have a playbook, like something that either is coming from a coach. I'm not sure if they're employing a coach right now. But I mean, this is something where I think that
coach.
Exactly. So when they maybe bring that next piece in, and to be able to push themselves a little bit further when they have a much deeper playbook on a deeper map pool or different agent compositions, that kind of thing, because we're so early right now, is TSM constantly going to be playing that game of catch up, in your opinion?
I think they are, except for the fact that so I think that they generally are, because TSM's style is a lot less adaptable. Because their hero pools or their agent pools, appear to be a little bit smaller in terms of what they've played in tournament matches, and they always need Wardell to be on the Jet in order to play that kind of style, and they always want a dueler as well, so they're always going to be playing double duelist at this point. And so I think it's much more difficult for them to adapt because they have one set style of how they want to play, and so their adaptations are going to be still limited to playing around that. So I think they're going to be trying to play a game of catch-up. But having said that, I thought the TSM were extremely one-dimensional before this tournament. But in this tournament, yes, I think they utilized the stuff that they had previously learned. And if they continue to be pushed by Sentinels and also pushed by Gen G as well, who people don't talk about very much, but Gen G are the most strategic team that we have in NA. They play some of the best Valorant. They're just way too predictable because they only rely on set strategies. But if they continue to get pushed by those kind of teams and develop that playbook, that's where I think TSM have the most potential to improve. Sentinels are already there. They've already got a bunch of different styles that they can play. And it comes down to, tailoring that for their opponents and being able to shut down AWPers and big players like TSM have. But TSM have got such unbelievable talent on Wardell and Sabrosa and Drone. And then also Hayes stepping up here as well, that they feel like if they can continue adapting the strategy to become a more strategic team with more executes, they almost have more potential to grow. They have only just started tapping into it, but they have a wealth of stuff they haven't even considered going for yet because they've just been in their one zone.
What an exciting time, man. Like it reminds me of the Lakers and the Celtics in the 80s. Like they both have huge, strong pieces, and they're just going to... Anyway, sorry, Lauren. I'm going to go into sports now. I'll stop myself.
It's all good. I mean, the fun thing for me is the fact that you throw a coach into the matter. Now, this is something that once we get to events and maybe pro leagues or what have you, it's a lot easier to kind of look after and implement well. I think 1 or 2 timeouts for the Sentinels during, let's say, the Ascent game, they could have adjusted very quickly to what was working very well against them. TSM controlled the entirety of the pace during that game with the aggression on the defensive side. It conditioned Sentinels throughout it to not be able to take any map control. And the same could be said on the defensive side. When Sentinels were on defense, they were super deep on sites. It's why Hazed was so incredibly good at exploiting middle. He was constantly being a threat, constantly being a nuisance. And then you kind of, again, this is me kind of highlighting what Cutler was doing. Cutler's camera positioning on its own denied the op presence away from Shazam. Shazam was unable to find any sort of work going because instantly he'd be spotted. He couldn't play up short. He couldn't do much. He was locked into the site. He lost that versatility that you'd love to see. So for me, 1 timeout, 1 coach saying, hey, we need to get back the pacing here. We need to keep some map control going. You need to somehow get a little bit of that aggression coming here because, again, the Omen work that was coming out from Hazed, in my opinion, like, this is great from Color. Nice old just passive angle. People are losing their minds about this. I'm like, that's just a safe angle. That play
only happens because of Hazed, though.
That's a basic bitching.
But Hazed was creating so much room and also getting so much map control, and I don't think people understand how much value is in map control because it removes all eyes, all vision. You can't put, the right amount of players on the right site. You can't get quick rotations. You're going to get picked off by these players. So again, for me, I think that if they even want it, they don't need it. 1 VOD review and they'll work this out for themselves. They're not stupid. They're very smart players. They'll give 1 coach input on maybe Sentinels, call that timeout. Okay, this is currently going against you. This is currently the problem. try and switch it up, try and find some room for Shazam to be able to have a bit more freedom. Let's try and, counter on this. Let's get ready to receive the constant aggression. I mean, how many times did you still see someone, just insta-pop flashing and pushing it? Like, the amount of times, because even them sitting, anti-flash on Sabrosa, he was still able to capitalize because no one was trading back in. They were playing scared. Sentinels were playing so scared sometimes. And it's something that I didn't see from them before, but they'd been conditioned by this constant aggression from the Jet, from Sabrosa coming in. So again, it's something they can break out of super easy, but they just need to sit there and review it and have maybe that little bit of a thought in the long run, because I said, I don't think they need to change much. They just need to know how much to change to meet the styles of TSM, whereas I don't know how much TSM can keep pushing on this. There's only so many times you can keep taking map control. So I'll be interested to see how much they can push that.
Give it to me, Josh. We're gonna be sitting here talking for the rest of today, so I have to push the run of show here. So give me your last thoughts on this one.
My last thoughts were that this is absolutely necessary to push the NA scene forwards. This kind of rivalry, because previously the NA scene, I feel, was in a bit of like a rut where they had just got into a system where everyone was trying to copy TSM's style of play and take aim duels, and they were just stuck AWPing and double AWPing and this kind of stuff, and there was no strategy behind it apart from Gen G. And now Sentinels have started adopting a lot more stuff. TSM have come up to it as well, and it feels like the top 4 teams, if Cloud9 are actually having a good day, which I don't even want to get into that, they are all pushing themselves to improve. And you look over at Europe and it's G2, and I'm not sure who's really going to push them as hard as the NA teams are getting pushed. So I think that NA absolutely needed this rivalry to catch up and maybe even in the coming months surpass the EU scene, because otherwise it looked like they were going to just get stuck in the same kind of rhythm. But this is looking like they're going to totally break out of it.
I can't wait just for it's great for everyone when you have a rivalry like this. It's gonna be a rocket ship. So I actually had the opportunity to talk to Hayes regarding the strategy implementation as well as the rivalry. So let's hear it from Hayes, who again just gave me a gift of an interview at the end of their games here. Were you game planning for individual players, or was it more of a whole team strategy?
No, it's definitely a whole team strategy. I'm not going to go in depth about how we prepared for the team or
of course
what was said, but we definitely had a game plan against them. There were certain areas on every map that we knew we could attack at certain points because they have weaknesses there, and we exploited that. It was still really close because admittedly, even though I don't like them, they are good players. They're a good team, and even when you make the right reads. Yeah, no, it is an awful feeling. You make the right read sometimes, and you still lose the round because they're good players. So yeah, it is frustrating, but I can't go into detail too much.
I get it. So that's Hayes not really wanting to give us too much, but obviously that's it's expected. But really the real gift was him actually talking about the dislike on TSM for the Sentinels rosters, or at least a couple of them. Let's hear about that as well. Okay, all right. Well, listen, you're leading into it, so I got to ask, what is the deal? What is going on here? Where is this coming from?
There's a lot of beef that I won't talk about because it's not my place. But
all right.
I personally have a problem with Zoms from the beta, actually.
Okay.
I didn't know who he was, but he was queuing with all those guys, and he would just talk trash nonstop. And I'm like, dude, who are you? I don't know. You're not a friend. You can't do this. We're not cool like that.
Okay.
And so yeah, from that, I don't know where he got his ego from. It's weird.
Okay, you're not trolling me, right? You're not trying to pull one over on me. This is real beef.
Yeah, I don't like.
Oh my goodness. Okay, man. Well, I could barely contain my excitement, as you can see. So we'll start with you, Josh. What do you think? I was so excited because I thought it was all trolling on Twitter. I thought it was just bullshit for the just for the clicks. But I know that Shazam and Wardell don't like each other. I now know that Hayes and Zoms are not cool. And obviously you have I asked Sinatra about it. He's like, I don't do that. I don't play that shit. So I understand why, I think there's probably points on the roster between these two teams that have some issues. But give me your side of it, Josh. What do you think?
I think it's awesome to see, honestly, isn't it? Because it's a genuine rivalry. Like a lot of these things kind of get manufactured where you see teams play against each other a lot, and you're like, oh, there's a real rivalry here in terms of the teams are all constantly playing against each other, and they're foes in terms of making it to the #1 spot. But they are actually super cool, and they're like, oh yeah, they're great guys. Don't worry, we don't even mind losing to them. And it's just there's something extra that drives competition when you genuinely want to beat your opponents, not just to prove that you're the best, but to put them down as well. That's the wonderful extra added motivational aspect. I also know that Zoms loves to talk a bit of shit, and like he's cheeky in terms of how he interacts with people. So that doesn't surprise me that he's pissed Hayes off.
Lauren, how about yourself?
It's fine. I mean, I love the fact like Hayes is actually such a laid back dude as well. Like the funny thing is like I just don't see him like ever getting tilted. Like they're all good at like memeing out. So I don't know. I think it's good fun. It's a good laugh. And you know what? Fuck it. More of that's fine by me. It's all good fun and games as long as the fans aren't too like brain dead to realize that it's all in good competition until they're like, I'm gonna find where your mother lives. Like, all right, until that point, like it's all good, right? But some of these fans, man, I swear to God, they've got like the TSM tattoo on their arm. They're sitting there just sweating. Like, where are they located? So, I mean, as I said, like, I love it. Like, I've played games. I used to love doing that, talking shit. It gives you like a mental edge. You keep getting aggressive in teams' faces. You keep fucking them over on the most like assertive plays you can do, and you talk a little bit of shit back. Like, it tilts you off the face of the earth. Like, the players may not admit it, but trust me, they are sitting there fucking pissed. You're already annoyed. You don't want to lose to these guys. And it's great. Yeah. It adds to it. I mean, like, bring it on.
Sinatra as well also used to do that all the time in the Overwatch League. That's what his team was famous for. Dominate. They used to go into scrims and deliberately try their absolute hardest to dominate the other teams so that they were scared to play them in matches. I don't know anybody else, any other team that like goes that hard in the paint during scrims to like show everything, like show their full strength just to get the mental dominance over their opponents. And then they'll go into the matches and they'll like teabag them all over the place as well, just to get into their heads. Like I think for Sinatra, there's no direct, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think there was direct beef with anybody in the Overwatch League or anybody outside. He seems like a really pleasant dude, but he understands that mental warfare component.
Velly, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a win-win for the viewers. When I came to Rainbow Six, there was like no trash talk. There was one guy named Fabian, the god of Siege, right? He was the only one that really said it how it was, and the scene was kind of boring because of that. There was no real rivalries. Like, there was nothing. Like, the competition was kind of like stale if you're an outsider watching for the first time. And recently, I guess I brought over some of that Gears of War bullshit. And now you got, Canadian, he talks trash to players. You got Oxygen talking trash. And what that creates, it creates an environment to where it's fun. Yes, some of the viewers that Lauren was talking about, they're going to be hardcore and be like, oh, fuck him, he's talking trash. But other viewers, we look at it like we will look at wrestling, like traditional sports. We understand that it's for fun. We know that this isn't personal. They're not talking about each other's mama right here, each other's wifeys and whatnot. It's strictly in-game talk. And when that happens, it allows the talent to like that. It allows the scene to just take the stick out of their ass and have fun. So I love it. And by the way, I kind of wanted to say on the last segment, even when it was like a 1v4 on the last map, and someone was in U-Haul with the shotgun, and they jumped out and got the kill, and it started teabagging him instead of trying to win out the round. It's fun. You can't complain about it. I think esports needs more of it.
I agree. I love rivalries, and again, really from a viewership perspective, there is nothing, and Riot will tell you about rivalries going back to CLG and TSM back in the day, that they love this stuff because it just drives interest. If you know that two players or two teams hate each other, there's way more to latch onto, and you can pick a side and you can trash talk each other in Twitch chat and stuff like that. I said before, it's like the Lakers and the Celtics, but the issue with the Lakers and the Celtics back in the day is that Larry Bird and Magic were friends. So now I'm changing this to like the Pistons and the Bulls. Those two teams fucking hated each other, and like to the point where they left Isaiah Thomas off the Dream Team because they hated him so much. So anyway, without going too deep down the sports ball hole, I love to see it. Love to see the rivalry. Can't wait to see where it goes. But I imagine we've kept a poor Sideshow over time. I have to say thank you, sir, for sticking with us. We sometimes go a little bit long in the tooth in these discussions, but Obviously, he's got a ton of content. He's doing VOD breakdowns. He's a streamer. You can find him on the Overwatch League and a bunch of other places. Sideshow, where can we find all your content?
Yeah, I'll be doing live streams of some Valorant breakdowns on twitch.tv/sideshow, but most of them will just be YouTube videos that are uploaded to youtube.com/sideshow gaming. And then, yeah, you can catch stuff on Twitter as well at the same handle that you see underneath. And it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll happily engage in some long in the tooth discussions with you anytime, Moses.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'll have to break in. Of course, Velly. Go, of course.
Josh, I just want to say, man, I love what you do on the desk. I think what you do to bring entertainment to esports is definitely something that I want more titles to do. So I want to thank you for making Overwatch extremely fun. I know you're not on the desk anymore. You're a caster now, but I love what you do. I love your work, man. I hope to see you again.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem, man.
Sideshow, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, I'll be jumping in to watch your VOD reviews because I know I need to increase my brain size when it comes to this stuff because, man, we're moving fast. It's not just about clicking heads right now. It's about all the strategy that comes with it, and I don't think there's anyone showcasing it as well as you have been in your VOD reviews. So again, thank you for stopping by. We can't wait to have you back, and we'll check in with you soon. I wanted to get your opinions on the power rankings as well. So maybe if you have some that you can shoot me a DM on Twitter. But
sure.
Thanks again, my man, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Sideshow, ladies and gentlemen. Check out Josh Wilkinson at Sideshow Gaming on YouTube and everywhere else where you can find some content. Velly, I think I'm going to be the last webcam standing here in the next little bit. So can we get a screenshot of Velly or something?
Is my webcam looking good too?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We're flying solo here. It's all good. So as far as the power rankings are concerned, we might as well jump right into it. We can jump into the discussion since we've been going way the hell over time, but here's what I came up with for this week's power rankings. Shout out to Daniel for adding the movements in there as well. So I of course, since TSM did beat Sentinels twice in the same tournament, they will get the #1 overall spot in my power rankings for this week. Sentinels drops down to #2. Immortals from out of the top 5 and into the 3rd position. They jumped up the highest over everybody. Gen G did climb up 1 as well, and then Cloud9 did drop 2 spots as they did not have a great tournament. So we'll start with you, Pansy. Attack my rankings. What do you have to say?
No, I like it. I actually think it's.
Damn it.
Yeah, no,
really good.
I'm trying to think of I actually like it because Immortals, I think with Dicey definitely is there. I'm hoping it's not like the honeymoon period where it's just it flows, but for now that's certainly spot on. I'm glad that Sideshow mentioned that Gen G do technically play one of the best games of Valorant out there, but they just don't have that X factor, I feel, at times.
Yeah.
So yeah, put them up there. I think it's pretty spot on. And yeah, until maybe T1 or someone else rears up again, solid Cloud9 I'd still say is in the right place. Where was Envy on it? Did you drop out Envy?
Envy was like 6th, 5th. Like it was hard for me because looking at their tournament performance, they did all right, obviously, but they didn't do enough for me to keep their spot over Cloud9.
I think they're interchangeable.
It's really close on the fringes and at the top.
Yeah. I think if we see more from Cloud9, just another good result, like maybe a push to the semifinals rather than quarters.
Yeah.
So exactly. A little bit more of that. Yep. Bump them up. But honestly, split them whichever way you want. I think that's a pretty solid top 5 right now.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, it was like Envy did beat Cloud9 in the quarterfinals. But it was 2-1 Cloud9. It's really close. Gen G 2-0'd Envy. It is again very, very close in some regards, and really it's a matter of body of work versus like one tournament result, but it is definitely close, and really it's about momentum. And I do feel like Immortals has a lot of momentum right now, even though you have to wonder what their ceiling is as a squad. We'll have to see with a couple more games with Dicey where he comes in. But Velly, I wanted to talk to you about Gen G specifically, because this is a squad that doesn't really have the firepower. Like Sideshow just mentioned, they have one of the best strategy games out there right now. But what do you think this team is missing?
And it's not firepower, right? I don't know. Like we say it a million times a show. They're smart. They can place well, but they can't beat the better teams. And one of the main reasons why is because just gunplay is just not there. I mean, it gets to a point where, once again, I live and die by this model. You try out a team for a good amount of time, and if you're just really stuck in the same spot, then bring some change. Your strategy isn't lacking, but it has to do with the gunplay and matching up with the top fraggers in the scene. So you got to look at where you could fit in those type of players and who needs to be swapped out. I don't think they're desperate or they have to be drastic to do it right now, but it has to happen because their last match against Immortals was pretty bad at all. And like you look at him and everyone else, and you question, can they get better? I don't think they can individually. So that change has to happen.
Are you saying that like Hwyn? Like I thought Hwyn was their high point. I thought he was the high point personally. He had some great games.
He has had some great games, but you gotta look at the overall picture, and also even recently, I'm looking at Immortals right now. Spain. We can look at previous games. So if it's not him, who else has to go?
Well, I'm not sure if it's about I don't know if it's about going. I think it's more of about like maybe experimenting a little bit with player roles, because I mean in the case of yeah, exactly.
I want him to throw a curveball in there once in a while.
Yeah.
Like, okay, out of every 3 rounds,
every
they
once
do
in a while, and
something
just kind of game a little bit.
Exactly, just free play it once in a while. Play off those individuals.
Go ahead, Velly.
No, go. Excuse me?
I'm not sure if you were trying to break in on a point there. I mean,
I said Hwyn's name on accident. I apologize.
No, it's all good. Yeah, no, I kind of feel that Hwyn was was definitely a high point for them. Guimon, GMD, he was playing well. But I mean, I kind of wonder a little bit about their ability to flex out of executes and deal with those rounds when things aren't going perfectly well. Let's say they get a pick, or they get picked, or Hwyn loses his op battle in the first couple of seconds, or whatever happens, and their ability to flex out of the playbook a little bit, play a little. I use the term aggressive loosely, but like be aggressive in mindset, maybe not so in the server. You know what I mean? Just being able to kind of break out of a comfort zone that maybe they feel that they're in. Because Gen G has shown that they can definitely stack up against basically any team, but it really doesn't seem to have consistent formula. And I wonder if a player like Hwyn on the Jet is able to kind of climb into that. Like TenZ is the model, obviously, but TenZ is a very special player, but kind of move towards that, like that unpredictable role. Because Sinatra said himself about TenZ is that even though he plays hyper aggressive, you're never quite ready for it. So if you can model yourself even a little bit, or watch TenZ and try and maybe steal some of his tricks, or just try and play and understand him a little bit, maybe this is something that Gen G could apply in the future. But Gen G, for considering their firepower, like their overall, they don't really have that star factor. They have been performing well, so to me, that's why I left them at number 4. And Cloud9 does have a better body of tournament results than Envy did. I mean, Cloud9 did win recently as well. So I imagine that Envy and Cloud9 are kind of going to be battling around that top spot. And the kind of sad thing, unfortunately, is that no, T1 has now left the discussion entirely. Like, this is now a team that, at least based on the rankings, is 10th in the world, and in North America, I think even then they're outside of the top 5 by a decent margin, with Envy climbing behind.
Didn't we call this out like a month ago, though? Go ahead, Pansy. I'm sorry. Yeah,
pretty much. No, you bang on. We did. But even outside that, I just want to kind of talk a little bit of inside baseball, I guess, in a weird way, when it comes to Counter-Strike. With Nitro leaving, right? You looked at North America and Counter-Strike. This was, I think Thorin was discussing it recently on one of his podcasts and shows. And essentially, it left that opping or AWPing role open for Liquid in North America. And they were looking at young talent. I think they brought in someone called Grim, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very young, very unheard of, very young in that regard compared to the others. Funny thing is, if I think Wardell didn't fully commit to Valorant, his name would have definitely been up there. So that could be such a fun concept to see Nitro against Wardell, potentially, if, let's say, Nitro does join T1, puts them back on par. You have 2 very similar AWPers coming in that could have potentially, And then you got to argue, would Wardell being on one of the best North American CS teams, and yeah, there's so much fun behind it. Like Grim's great, but as well with Wardell, his style would have fit that perfectly. So people were really theorizing, if he hadn't committed to Valorant, would he have been maybe fulfilling that role as Nitro would have left? So plenty of fun with rosters to think about. But yeah, I think T1 need that shakeup. I think right now we're looking at a roster that simply doesn't work. They had initial success. It's just not there right now. It's fizzled out. They cannot keep up with the meta. And Nitro might be the perfect way to kind of fix that. I feel, at least.
I think so too. I would love to see Nitro go to a team like T1. And I was going to say this earlier. It's really it's a nothing fact, but I posted a poll up on Twitter about who the teams I would if you could choose where would you like to see Nitro go, since it was confirmed that he's looking to make the Valorant by ESPN Esports. Where would you like to see him go? And a very well-known, well-connected player within the scene reached out to me and said one of these is correct. And the 4 choices were T1, 100 Thieves, Cloud9, and Liquid North America. So someone did confirm to me that one of those choices was the right answer. So, obviously going on the fact that this person is right, not to mention the fact that there's 4 choices that are very obvious where he would go. So maybe it'll be a surprise, maybe it won't be, but Nitro obviously likely now becomes the hottest free agent out there right now. And I would love to see where he ends up going. So that kind of brings us to the end for our power rankings. So let's get some final thoughts on the week that was, Pansy. What are you looking forward to next?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm half watching Team Liquid's first debut and Fun Plus Phoenix, wherever the name is, I can't even remember it. But Chow, Angel, like that's just started up right now. So and Liquid are up 2 rounds to the good. So let's go, boys. But no, I'm super excited to watch that. That's a really big game, big debut for Liquid under that tag. You don't want to fuck up your first tournament, right? And the same can be said for the other team. You want to make that good impression, right? So it's like already pressured. And then you add that layer of like, let's not dip out on the first go of things as this new team that we've been waiting to join for so long. The other team had to split up to make a roster to finally get picked up by an org. So much pressure on those two. So it's gonna be super fun. Obviously, Liquid out of the two is way more time together. Of course, like that goes unsaid. But if they get pushed, I wouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah,
Velly, final thoughts.
Me personally. The week, yes, I want to see what's going to happen with T1, also 100 Thieves. I saw a clip from Nate Shot talking about how very disappointed he was with the lack of success with his 100 Thieves teams. I'm guessing Valorant was definitely up there because I know that's a costly addition to the roster, right? So I wonder, are they going to stick this out? Is something going to change? What's going to happen? I love the brand, so I want to see the end result.
100 Thieves is blowing that team up. They're going to keep Venerated. They're going to keep Hiko, and I think everyone else is potentially on the block.
That's why I'm excited. So, I want to see the chaos that comes from that shit. It's going to be amazing.
Well, there's I mean, a lot of people. Shit, man. If I had to pick an org that if I was ever going to be affiliated with from like a credibility standpoint, cool factor, Boomer becomes Zoomer moment, I'm going 100 Thieves. I'm waiting for my 100%. New shirt in the mail so I can hang out with the cool kids. I mean, I just feel bad for the 100 Thieves roster because of where they came from and where they're unfortunately going right now, which is back to the pro gamer for question mark tag on their Twitter bio. But
that sucks. They'll be all right.
Sucks, we committed. We tried.
We
tried. I was on the fucking bandwagon the whole way. And now I'm like, it's like the Oregon Trail. Like there's just a litter of bodies behind me, and I'm like the last guy on the wagon now.
You know why I'm
Oregon
excited
Trail
for that, though?
For all you boomers.
I missed that game. The reason why I'm really excited for this, I hope that this is the start of what Artis was talking about with teams. He says teams, like a lot of teams out there, they don't have a strong 5. They have a strong 2. They have a strong 1. And I'm hoping that 100 Thieves are looking at their roster, and when they blow that shit up, they don't just bring people in just because. They start to plug in another star, another superstar, like another one. And I hope that creates a path with that type of culture.
All right.
I mean,
I've just received the word that
Superman.
There's a lot of choices out there. There's a lot of people trying on their fits for the 100 Thieves jersey right now for sure. But I've just received word that we're about to be yoinked off the air due to time. I think we have like we have a Red City rerun coming up back behind us. We've overrun our slot by about an hour. But it's been a tremendous show. And you know, Ian is going to set me on fire because we're blowing up their VMix. We're blowing up their VMix license here. So let's say goodbye for the week. Thank you, Velly. Thank you, Pansy, and of course, thank you to Sideshow for joining us. And for everyone in the chat, don't forget to follow us here on Twitch at twitch.tv/DNPeak, on YouTube at Do Not Peak Entertainment, and subscribe on your podcast network wherever you can be finding us, on Apple, Spotify, and so many other major spots. So thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back next week, 11 a.m. Pacific time. This has been Valoranting, and we'll catch you out there next time, guys.